Welcome, commissioners. I think I'm on. Commissioners, if you could grab your seats. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Toronto Transit Commission Board Meeting number 2012. Any declarations of interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? I see none. Could I have a commissioner move the minutes of the previous meeting? Moved by Vice Chair Heisey. All in favor? No opposed. That carries. We'll do a run through the agenda. There are several items that have public speakers or deputants to, so we'll hold those obviously, and then there are others with presentations. Starting with number 1, the CEO's report, I will hold that, and I'll hold number 2. If commissioners are okay with it, we may move the King Street item to number 3. And then the auditor's items right after that, just because of their need to leave. So is everyone okay with that? Yeah. Okay. At least on the list, item number 3, TYSSC subway extension. Does anyone want to hold that or move the actions taken in camera? Move the actions. Okay. All in favor? No opposed. That carries. Item number 4, TYSSC claim settlement update. Moved by staff recommendations, moved by Commissioner Campbell. All in favor? No opposed. That carries. Number 5, Wheel-Trans sedan meter bid. We've got deputants. Thank you. And 6 we do. Item number 7, I'll hold that. I have a motion. 8 is got DEPS on King. Number 9, Canadian content bus procurement. All in favor? That carries. No opposed. Number 10, procurement authorization, supply of Ford parts. Moved by Commissioner Lalonde. All in favor? No opposed. That carries. 11 and 12, we will hold for now if there are questions, noting that those have obviously both been dealt with at the Audit and Risk Subcommittee. Item number 13 is the audit results for the year end for the TTC. Moved by Commissioner Byers. It's a fun one. All in favor? That carries. I'll hopefully give Commissioner Byers a similar honor to move the draft consolidated financial statements. Okay, thank you. All in favor? Carries. Item number 15 is 587 Yonge Street, the entrance connection to Wellesley Station. Any questions on that? We'll have Commissioner De Laurentiis moves the staff recommendation. All in favor? Carried. Item number 16, TTC corporate policy review. Do we have a couple? Oh no, not that one. This is indemnification of board members item. Any questions? Okay, let's hold that under Commissioner Lalonde's name. Item number 17, there are people who have asked to be added to the deputants list, so we will hold that for now and then waive that when we come to the item. Number 18, TTC Pension Fund Society 2016 Annual Report. Okay, we'll hold that. Number 19 is a new business item, and this is Eglinton Crosstown Operation Agreements and Associated Costs. Move that. All in favor? Yeah, that carries. Number 20, there's a deputant, and I think Commissioner Fragadakis might want to move an amendment, so we'll hold number 20. So that brings us back to the top of the agenda, and just for everyone's sake, we're going to do the CEO's report, ACAT minutes, third we'll do King Street, and then we'll do the auditor's items if there are questions for that, and then go through the rest of the agenda as presented in front of us. So with that, we'll move to the CEO's report. I'll ask our CEO to give a few highlights and then go to questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. Just very brief comments from me really today. First up on performance, you can see the scorecard as usual is in the binder. I was largely going to leave that as read because most of the statistics in there, so those relating to the subway, are the Q1 stats that you looked at last period, but obviously take any questions you've got. We've had a few hot days, so far so good, Mr. Chair, on T1 air conditioning. Projects are going well. As I speak, there is a walk around happening at Pioneer Village Station with the project team, and hopefully by the end of today That will become the fourth of 6 stations, so 2/3, the fourth of 6 stations to achieve substantial completion. I'll know by the end of the day. That only then leaves Highway 407 and Finch West to complete. A couple of other comments about projects. We now have 37 streetcars in service. The mean distance between failure, I suspect, will garner some questions. It's largely related to doors, so they're happy to take any questions you've got on that. It is still a fairly small fleet, and you do tend to get door problems with new vehicles in their infancy. We certainly had that with the rocket chains, and the rocket chains are now pretty much Asian standard in terms of reliability, and heading towards 1 million kilometers between casualty. What I would ask you to also have a look at, though, on a more positive note, in the graphs you'll see the bus mean distance between failure is at a record level, actually. It's around 16,000 kilometres. Second point I was going to make, we recently held the Doors Open Toronto, sticking with the TYSSE. Our contribution was to open up Downsview Park and York University stations, and we had around 5,000 visitors through those 2 stations, and a hugely positive reaction. People were blown away by the scale and beauty of the stations, actually, and we were able to also update customers on the other things that they'll get with those stations. They'll be Wi-Fi equipped, they'll be Presto equipped, and they will be the signalling system will be ATC, which also is going well. I just wanted to then finish, Mr. Chair, if I may, by noting that today will be the last board meeting attended by 2 of my executives. I'll start with Chris Upfold, the Deputy CEO and the Chief Customer Officer. If you recall, Chris joined us. His role was created by the customer panel back in 2011, correct, Chris? 2010, 2011. And the role was created to kickstart the transformation of the TTC in terms of the customer service offered. And I think it's no exaggeration to say that the look and feel of the TTC right now, Chris, your sort of influence can be felt everywhere. It is a demonstrably different TTC in terms of the quality of the customer service offer, the uniforms, the line numbers. There's huge amounts of progress being made down to the leadership and the commitment and the passion that you've shown. That plus, you delivered the Pan Am Games service, you developed the Pan Am Games transit plan, and that was, I might use my word at the time, flawless. A lot of people thought that we couldn't do it, and we did. And then a myriad of other things. You'll be hugely missed. You're now heading off with your wife to take a nice 6-month break. We're very envious, and we wish you all the very best for the future. I really appreciate what you've done, not only as the Chief Customer Officer, but also as my Deputy CEO for the last 5 years. Thank you so much. And the second person who's leaving is our esteemed Chief Financial and Administration Officer, Vince Rodo, who truly, I think, can be said is a stalwart of the TTC. It will be really strange not having you around. You have probably the strongest corporate knowledge of anyone at the company. You've been here 34 years. You've been there, seen it, and done that. You've done practically every job. You've headed up practically every department in your time. And I think we'll really miss your knowledge, not least your ability in these meetings to guide us through successive chairs, more chairs than I can care to remember, and a huge number of chief general managers, actually, you've supported through thick and thin. So I don't know what we're going to do without you. You're taking retirement, but not really, because we know you're about to pop up somewhere else. And you go with our absolute best wishes. On a personal note, as someone who took over the leadership of the TTC in slightly unusual circumstances and pretty much with no notice, I cannot express how grateful I am to you for the personal support and friendship that you've given me. I couldn't have done this job without you, Vince. Good luck. Congratulations. So, Mr. Chair, I'll just finish off just by, we did put an org notice out about this, but just so you know what the coverage arrangements are. In terms of covering Chris in his Chief Customer Officer capacity, Kirsten Watson sitting over there, I've stepped Kirsten up to Acting Chief Customer Officer until the end of the year. Very busy 6 months coming up, so Kirsten will cover that job. Behind her, her substantive position of Deputy Chief Service Officer will be Collie Greenwood, who's currently Head of Bus Transportation. I'm not sure if Collie's here, I can't say I've seen him. And then the third point, a third of four, is I will, from July the 1st, which is the day after Chris finishes, Rick Leary will be appointed Deputy CEO. That's a substantive appointment, not an acting appointment. He will be the Deputy CEO. And finally, in terms of replacing Vince, we've got a process ongoing at the moment to replace Vince with a slightly changed role. It will be a pure CFO role, Chief Financial Officer, without the administrative add-ons. The Human Rights Department will come under Gemma as Chief People Officer, and Legal will report to me. So I hope to be able to unveil a new CFO over the summer. We're in the process of long-listing and shortly shortlisting for a permanent replacement. On that, Mr. Chair, I will hand over for questions.
Great, and I guess on behalf of commissioners, I should, commissioners at this table currently and previous ones, in the case of both of you, thank you both for so many years of service, and certainly the TTC and our customers are better off because of your commitment that you've shown and your contribution to the TTC and really to the City of Toronto. So thank you both for that, and I'll hand it over to commissioners for questions on the CEO's report, starting with Commissioner Byers.
Thank you very much. Few questions, Andy. So on your report, on page 8, my first question relates to capital projects. So firstly, thank you for the additional disclosure in your report on capital. On the Vision project, and this is in the table on page 8, small confusion, not a big point, but the schedule is in yellow, and the end date says it was approved for Q4 2020, but now is revised to Q1 2020. Seemed like a good thing, yet it's yellow, small point, didn't know whether there's anything to that, and you can easily follow up later.
No, I mean, the general headline, though, with the Vision project, it's progressing well. We've already had a trial on the buses, on a number of buses where we fitted the equipment to test the ergonomics and to make sure that the operators are happy with where the equipment will be based. We've also now moved the Mount Dennis team, the CIS team, into the upstairs part of transit control, because what we're going to end up with is an integrated transit control centre whereby subway will be downstairs, surface will be upstairs, and progressively we'll move the other divisions across. So we're pretty happy generally with the progress being made. It's going to be absolutely transformative for not only the information we give to operators and through them to customers, but also the way we can manage and control the at-surface fleet.
Great, thank you.
Service.
Page 12, Bombardier streetcars. So in Queens Quay this morning, I saw 4434 and 4435, so that's coming along. Just curious, they're about to hit the phase in the 2017 schedule where monthly deliveries are, substantial. Can you give us a sense of your confidence in their ability to deliver that for the balance of the year?
Okay. So in advance of any board meeting, I make a point of contacting Benoit Brossois, who's the CEO of Bombardier, to just check that he is still standing by that statement so that I don't inadvertently mislead you. And he says, absolutely, they are on track to deliver that 70. I don't just go by what he says. We also have our own people who know what's going on in Thunder Bay, and they have seen the next batch of vehicles almost at the end of their production process, so there will be a whole bunch more shipped soon. But you're absolutely right, we're heading now into the real business end of this year's deliveries, and I think the next month will be critical in that respect.
Great, thank you. Two more for me quickly. Page 52, the overall revenue is, so 2017 year-to-date results, overall our revenue is down, but there's a comment in that paragraph there that talks about the fare mix, the revenue, the mix being up 1.5%, which I was intrigued about. And so I don't know whether
Yeah, I can.
Who would have some, okay, Vince?
So we've talked before about the drop in MetroPass sales that happened particularly in January, but we've had a few other months where MetroPass sales were down. Because MetroPass sales are down, what we've seen is an increase in tokens and cash. So they're shifting from a MetroPass, we get fewer rides, but we're getting a slightly higher average fare. So on average, the fare people are paying is a little higher. So the bad news is ridership's down, the good news is revenue's not down as much.
Got it. Okay, makes sense. Lastly, so we were going to have a budget committee, didn't happen. I'm just curious, though, about budget. We're now halfway through the year. I don't know, and there's other members, there's members of council here who may have, I don't know what the city has said to us so far and what your internal planning is, but I know we had a kind of a scramble last year, and just curious, the dialogue you're having with the city, our internal planning to meet what their objectives might be, so.
Commissioner, do you mean with regard to next year's budget?
Correct.
Right, okay, so that process is well in hand. We were required to give a preliminary OPEX and CAPEX budget to the city by 12th of June, as were all the other agencies, and we duly met that time frame. So now we have the remainder of the spring, well, not quite the summer yet, and throughout the summer to refine that figure. In both cases, CAPEX and OPEX, we're clear on what the city's direction is, and we're working towards that.
Great. Other questions? Commissioner De Laurentiis and then Mahevik.
Page 8, Andy. On the Presto, under 3 of the outlooks, we have a yellow, so at risk. So we're at risk of not meeting project objectives, but overall, we've got a G, which is good to meet project objectives. So maybe just, I guess I'm not following that logic.
Okay, I mean, we will meet the objective, as in we will fully introduce Presto, but some of the milestones for the rollout of Presto are behind schedule, hence the yellows. So, for example, the rollout of full-service fare vending machines is running late because Metrolinx are still developing the machines. They've just deployed them in Ottawa, but we need to make sure that those things are reliable before we can deploy them onto our system. And similarly, we haven't yet rolled out open payment. That will come at a later stage. So there's a number of things that we're tracking and monitoring, but overall we will still meet our objective of rolling out Presto.
Okay, just our date's going to be a bit.
Yes, I mean, Chris, did you want to add to that at all? Okay, I think my answer stands.
Yeah.
We meet with them. I meet with Presto at CEO level once a month. Working groups work with them practically weekly on pushing to get these remaining deliverables done. The job we're doing at the moment is now retrofitting the original 26 stations, and this is our work, not Presto's, with Fairgate. So you'll still see a lot of progress happen over the next few months.
Okay. And then my second question, page 27, under customer engagement. So this is, the engagement here is with current customers, but one of the methods in surveying or understanding customer service is to go back to those who have left us for whatever reason. And I think we have an agency that we use to do customer surveying, customer satisfaction surveying, right?
That's correct.
And so I really think we should ask them, because I think it will help inform some of the other projects that we're looking at, particularly the project around creating express routes, that we really should go to clients who have left the TTC, have left transit, and just understand why. What was it? Was it, we can guess from the satisfaction survey of current members, but I think there's a lot of really valuable information that we could get from individuals who have left, because it could be issues not within the control of the TTC. There could be other issues, and then we could use that information to inform other departments, if it's something else. So I would really strongly recommend that we make use of that, and they can just create, they can create panels online. It's not it's a technique that all survey firms use quite regularly, so that's all.
Commissioner will reflect upon the practicalities of that and I'll let you know what we find, but certainly I think it's useful to know why people have stopped using the service. It's not always easy to figure out who they are, but let me discuss that with my team and I'll come back to you.
Okay.
Other questions? Commissioner Mihevc, then Vice Chair Heisey.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'm just wondering, last month we talked about having a little section on operator, on vehicle hours. Is that kind of in the plans so that we would know how much service is actually out there by sector, perhaps divided by peak, off-peak, weekend as well?
Yeah, we haven't forgotten, Commissioner. We've got a lot on our plate at the moment, but we're aiming to give you that actual versus scheduled in the next CEO's report for July.
Right, okay. I look forward to getting that. And then the other question, I'm very pleased around the LRVs being delivered. I think someone sent a picture of one leaving Thunder Bay that the last two digits were 38. So I think that brings us up to the end of April's requirements, I think. June's requirements. They were required to deliver 3 at the end of June, by the end of June.
The 37th just went into service, so you weren't imagining that. That 38 has shipped from Thunder Bay.
Okay. Queen Street. So we've gone from streetcars to buses. Have we planned it? If you did a mathematical calculation of the capacity of the ALRVs that are on Queen Street, the CLRVs that are on Queen Street, and the replacement buses, have we replaced space for space during peak and off-peak and weekend hours?
I might defer to my team for specifics, but we know what the capacity requirement is, and we believe that the bus service can accommodate that capacity need, is the simple answer. But Chris or anyone, does anyone know specifically?
I'm asking whether, frankly, if there's been any shortchanging done.
By shortchanging, what do you mean? So less capacity?
If we had a capacity with the ALRVs and CLRVs of, I don't know, what would a peak hour be? 5,000, that the buses, are they able to carry 5,000?
I'd have to defer to my team or take that on notice. But what we've put on the buses to accommodate the need. Is Jackie here? Can you answer that? Thank you.
We have replaced capacity for capacity. We might be short by about 2 buses some days, but certainly when we do the calculations, we try to replace capacity for capacity.
So there has been no shortchanging,
No,
except for 2% sometimes?
yes.
Peak or off-peak?
Peak? I'll say during peak.
Okay, thank you.
Vice Chair Heisey?
So I don't drive a car very much, but this weekend I did, and I had the frustrating experience as sort of a car driver trying to use transit. So Line 2 was closed, I think, for some
That's correct.
section.
St. George to Broadview.
And then I was down on Lakeshore, and Lakeshore was closed for some worthy event near High Park. And I started to wonder, do we coordinate, is there coordination along all levels of government about transit versus transportation road closures? Do we coordinate those things? Because sort of anecdotally, it didn't look this weekend like it had happened, but is there thought given into coordinating closures of various modes of transportation so that they don't coincide?
Yes, Commissioner, there is such coordination. I mean, sometimes it's impossible not to impact upon big events, because there's a big event practically every month every weekend in a busy city like this. But there is a closures coordination group that has multiple agency representation, city transportation, TTC, and various other bodies, to make sure that you try to minimize the impact and not create gridlock. And you look at events as well.
Other questions? Other commissioners have questions on the CEO's report? Anyone want to speak to it? I'll move receipt of the CEO's report. All in favor? Opposed? That carries. Thank you. Next item up is the approval of the ACAT minutes, and if I could just ask our ACAT chair, is Debbie Gillespie here? She's just setting up. If someone could just make sure Debbie's mic is on, that would be helpful too.
Down. Thank you, Mr. Cole, and thank you to the Board of Commissioners as well. I'd like to bring up some information for you as well in brief form. There are a couple of items on the current board agenda that have significant accessibility implications, and those are the King Street pilot and the Metrolinx operational agreement. As mentioned earlier, these items can hold significant impact accessibility measures, and I won't go into too much of those, but one of them is, excuse me, the crosstown allows for consistency of service and expectations of those who use both the Eglinton Crosstown and the TTC system. The King Street pilot, there was a marvelous presentation on that in April, and the document, the ACAT did review this presentation at the Service Planning Subcommittee, and much work has gone into this pilot, and it has been well received, is my understanding, with questions on accessibility matters. The survey is also quite accessible to those who wish to do that. Moving now, if I could, Mr. Cole, to the minutes of April 27th. I'd like to congratulate the TTC on the accessibility plan that is now, the status report that is now currently on the website. It is easily understood, well presented, and very accessible to read in no matter what format that you choose. The Design Review Subcommittee, the two items of note here that were met in April's meeting were the ongoing review of the mobility transfer hubs. The Design Review Subcommittee made a few recommendations on installing visible markers on the glass walls to assist those who may have low lighting conditions, such as seniors and those with low vision, to actually know that they are walls and not just glass, so that you can be careful not to go through there. I think you can. It can happen to us all, I'm certain. The other item that they recommended as well, and it's in the works, is the two-way communication of the passenger information system, so that ideally customers at the hubs could communicate with Wheel-Trans operations, knowing that their ride will arrive. The second item for the Design Review Subcommittee dealt with the original 2016 ACAT platform gap motion. The report will be coming to the board later this summer, and it's important to note that when we talk about platform gapping, we're not talking about entire platforms or every station. It's segments of affected platforms. There are two types of gaps, the vertical and the horizontal edges, and we're hoping that this can be dealt with early in the new year, so that it allows people with visual impairment and those with not to A, know where the gaps are located if you cannot see the decals, and B, board and deboard safely. The Communications Subcommittee highlights, they reviewed the scenarios for the new streetcar education video. And again, this is crucial for accessibility implementations to allow others to understand how to access and work with accessible transit and use the new streetcars. It helps others, particularly those migrating to conventional service from Wheel-Trans services, family of services. The other piece to that is doing discussing measures and tools for messaging to allow courtesy for all riders. It's not just people with disabilities that require that, it's for everyone who rides the system, and it's an understanding piece for everyone. Wheel-Trans Subcommittee report. We reviewed the eligibility applications, and there's been a market increase, as you well are aware, from January to March 23rd of 2017. ACAT does get updates on these at their ACAT meetings monthly, so these work quite well for us to let us know. The other item of note for Wheel-Trans in April was they reviewed the new Wheel-Trans buses, and ACAT has been heavily involved in that. The last committee I'd like to report on, if I may, Mr. Cole, is the Service Planning Subcommittee, and the concern here is the upcoming planned outage for the elevator replacement. This has a great deal of implications for people with accessibility needs. What if you're already en route and you don't know that the elevator is out, for example? How will this information be conveyed effectively to riders? All of these items, we've discussed alternate bus routes to assist people for not waiting too long to get to an accessible station. On a personal note, and my last one is I've been chair now for 6 months in June. It is my pleasure to continue to bring you these reports. For those of you who are commissioners, do not hesitate to approach me. Crete won't bite, and at least I think not. And it's been a real pleasure for me to continue to do this for you. So any questions you may have on any of my reports ever or in the future, drop me a message or write ACAT. We're more than happy to respond to your questions. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much for that update. And does anyone have any questions of staff about the minutes? If not, I'll move receipt of the ACAT minutes and thank the chair for those introductory comments. All in favor? Great, that carries. That moves us now to, we've bumped up item number 8, which is the proposed King Street pilot. We do have a presentation from Barbara Gray, the General Manager of Transportation Services at the City of Toronto. Welcome.
Thank you.
You're on.
Let's try that again. I'm going to be joined by Jacqueline Hayward-Galati and Ashley Curtis on my staff so that we can provide detailed information on data and block-by-block design. But first, we're going to walk through quickly our presentation on the King Street pilot study. First question, we've been working on this project with TTC and with city planning for, I would say, about 6 months now, although the community has been engaged on looking at King Street and how we can move people in transit more effectively than we do today, probably for about a year's time. In fact, the community has been so enthusiastic about this concept when we started talking about doing sort of a longer investigation period before we came back with some proposals. We got strong feedback that we should move forward with the pilot quickly. So we're here now, and we're happy to present to you the information that we've pulled together and our proposal moving forward that we'll also be bringing to the Executive Committee on Monday and then to council, full council at their July meeting. So King Street, as you might know, is the busiest surface transit route in the city. It moves about 65,000 transit riders each day, and about 20,000 cars use the corridor. The only more congested or higher used ridership that we have in the system is on the subway line, so that's pretty, it's a very well-used corridor. Some of the challenges there, as anybody who's used it would know, is that the travel time can be quite slow, and as a commuter using the King car, you have to really plan for your slowest trip. And so we did a lot of analysis on how we would do a pilot and where we would focus our attention there. A couple of the key pieces was to look at the places where we had sort of the most congestion and also where we had a network in the system that was able to be adaptable to shifting transportation needs from other modes that might be moving off the corridor as a result of any pilot. We also know that the streetcars are often quite overcrowded and over capacity in rush hours, and I might argue that other times of the day that's the case as well. King Street is also not working particularly well for drivers these days. I think we've asked some anecdotal information from folks about what route do you pick to to drive through the city, and King Street doesn't usually come up on the top of the list. About 20,000 vehicles per day, largely local trips. We've done some travel demand modeling around that, and we know that about 50% of those cars that are coming to King Street are there for local trips. And we've also looked at the capacity in general in the surrounding network, and we want to make sure that operations will be monitored so that the surrounding network is able to work as effectively as possible to move other transit service and cyclists and vehicles and pedestrians as well. We also know that the neighborhoods continue to grow along the King Street corridor. This is our 2041 plan about projected population change, and you can see that there's a huge increase in population, a lot of it focused on the King Street corridor, and certainly there's only going to be growing demand for transit service. We've also tried a number of operational tweaks. So working in partnership with the TTC, we've done a lot of things to try to improve and increase service along King Street, including managing turning restrictions and parking restrictions, increasing fines, better signage, all-door boarding, some things that are actually quite big moves, even though they're tweaks. And what we still find is that the needs are greater, and that we need to sort of put our shoulders to the wheel and come up with a pilot that we think is really going to be able to solve some of our problems here. So many cities use pilots to test and measure and refine concepts before they go and put them in permanently. We believe that it's an appropriate time and that we have enough foundational information to be able to take the steps to move this pilot forward, that we can test it, that we can measure the results of it, and that we can refine it as necessary. Typically, a pilot is, certainly it has to be feasible. Typically, it's quite simple to implement. And so in figuring out sort of what our proposed solution would be, we have evaluated and moved forward, sort of put some ideas off the table that we're not recommending. So we're not recommending taking cars off King Street entirely. So King Street will still be available for cars. There are driveways and parking garages that exist on King that need access, as well as on-street loading spaces that are necessary for local businesses. There's certainly a robust market for taxi pickup and drop-off, and so we've taken all that into consideration and don't believe that making King Street car-free is the solution. A lot of folks have talked about making King and Queen a one-way pair, which the scope is way too large and complicated to actually implement that as part of a pilot project, and it would also negatively impact people who are walking to the service. There's been some discussion about replacing streetcars with buses, which is inefficient and costly. You'd need 2 to 3 replacement buses per streetcar, and the buses would still be stuck in the same traffic congestion, so we took that off the table for this pilot. And then moving the streetcar tracks to one side of the street is a huge capital endeavor and something that we certainly aren't funded to do and would physically be quite disruptive. However, King Street, as we know, is still not reaching its full transit potential, and so we really wanted to take a bigger move and really test out something that we think could work and have the opportunity to really put people in transit first in the King Street corridor. So I am going to let Jacqueline walk through the block-by-block design. I'll tell you that King Street today, as you know, the streetcars operate in mixed traffic. There are through movements allowed. There are some left turn movements allowed. Transit passengers have to cross live traffic to board the streetcar, and cyclists continue to ride in the curb lane and share space. Pedestrians are on sidewalks on both sides of the street. The volumes are quite high, and there's limited designated spaces for deliveries, loading, and taxis. We also identified 3 key design priorities, and you'll see as we talk about the monitoring of the pilot that we have focused our monitoring endeavors around these 3 key priorities. The first and the primary is really to move people more effectively and efficiently on transit. The second is to support business and economic prosperity, and the third is to improve public space, where we have some partnerships and the capacity to do so. We believe that improving streetcar performance is partially going to be the result of reducing traffic on King Street. And so if you take the streetcar during times of the day when the traffic is light, you typically move at a faster rate of speed and have more reliable service. And so looking at how we can get more streetcars running in the right-of-way that are less impacted by vehicle traffic was a key driving feature of the pilot's design. It should go now.
So to present the pilot to you, the objective, as has been stated, is to make transit first, and that the section of the pilot proposes between Bathurst and Jarvis. In that section, local traffic access would be allowed, but transit would be prioritized. And the reason for that section was partly described by Barbara earlier. In that section is where we see the most pronounced problems with streetcar reliability and issues with streetcar speed. But it's also the section from a transportation network perspective where we have the most options for alternative corridors. So within this section, we would see local traffic access allowed. You would enter King Street primarily through right turns. All of the existing right turn onto Kings would be remaining, and some existing left turns onto King would also be in place. You would not be able to make a left turn off of King Street or into a driveway or parking garage from King Street. Traffic would use parallel east-west routes. Queen, Richmond, Adelaide, Wellington, and Front would be expected to bear most of the dispersed traffic. The exceptions to any of the no through traffic rule would be obviously transit, that goes without saying, bicycles, police, fire, emergency services, and other street maintenance type vehicles such as sweepers or plows. Within this pilot area, there would be designated space for short-term loading, deliveries, and taxis. I'm going to show you an example block and then go through the way that the design for each of these objectives is applied for the example block. So with regards to moving people more efficiently on transit, the primary change is that key streetcar stops would be moved from the near side to the far side of the intersection with a physical bump out in the curb lane to prevent vehicles turning into that space. The objective of this is to improve passenger safety, improve streetcar boarding times by reducing the time that people are, rather than walking from the curb, they'd be walking from the curb lane, and the resultant increase in improvements in streetcar operations. It also provides a benefit for drivers because it would allow right turn traffic to queue before turning right on the near side of the intersection. The local traffic within the block would share the streetcar lane, but generally must turn right at most intersections. There'd be 4 exceptions where vehicles would be allowed to go through for particular reasons. Cyclists would have space within the curb lane beside the streetcar lane, and there would be no dedicated bike lanes within King. There would be more space for waiting transit passengers by having that space within the curb, and also releasing some of the space on the sidewalk to allow people to walk there. From the perspective of supporting business and economic prosperity, the key improvement here is that where there are existing very few designated spaces for short-term loading, deliveries, and taxi pickup drop-off, this would allow space for those activities to take place. There would be physical gaps in any space within the curb to allow traffic access to driveways. All on-street parking would be removed within this proposal, which consists of about 180 spaces, which is less than 3% of the almost 8,000 spaces within a 5-minute walk on adjacent streets or off-street parking lots. With regard to the objective of improving public space, I've already described the streetcar stops being on the street. At some locations, we would also see streetcar stop murals on the street to identify that space. We would use some of the space within the curb lanes for seating and planters. New public space would be established. We're proposing that as a second phase of the pilot, which would take place in spring of 2018. And that would be in partnership with BIAs, local businesses, and community organizations. Other improvements to that space would include bike parking and planters and things like that, with some programming with those partners. As a pilot project, it's critical that we evaluate and monitor in order to understand if it's working, to make refinements and to optimize how it's working before ultimately making an evaluation of whether it's performing to the objectives we're looking to see. And so within all of those design objectives that Barbara described earlier, there would be metrics calculated or collected, as part of our monitoring program to help us understand and evaluate the project. With regards to transit service, the key metrics would be reliability, speed, and capacity. We're looking to overall see an improvement in how many people this corridor can move. We would want to also monitor and see improvements in the safety of vulnerable users and universal accessibility. From the perspective of business and economic prosperity and the functioning of the transportation network, we would have quite a few metrics to understand the traffic impacts, both within King as well as in the overall transportation network. So looking at things like vehicle travel time, vehicle speed, and volumes on particular corridors. We would be monitoring on-site curbside activity, and we have a lot of information about the baseline of that activity, how many people are doing loading, deliveries, and drop-offs today, and understanding what that would be like within a pilot scenario. And we would monitor the compliance and enforcement. The city has been working in partnership with the BIAs to define an economic impact monitoring study, so more work is to take place in that regard, but we want to be able to report back on what the impacts are to the local business. And lastly, the category of improving public space is a little bit of a softer category, harder to measure, but we would look to see how much of an improvement in the public realm and how sticky is the corridor in terms of how people are enjoying that space. This is a three-phase pilot. The first phase was about developing the goals and the pilot options, in which we had a public meeting back in February. We had a second public meeting in May, in which we evaluated and selected the preferred pilot and presented that to public. We've had quite a few feedback as part of that in both online surveys and in person. Subject to comments from today's meeting, as well as from the executive committee meeting next week and council decisions, we would work together with the TTC to do the detailed design of the corridor and propose pilot implementation in fall of 2017 after the TIFF festival.
Okay. I think that's pretty much it. So thank you for your time and attention. I did also want to point out that we've been very fortunate to have some pretty significant communications work by the TTC and by Brad and his folks to get the message out in advance of the public meeting, which is extremely well attended, as well as getting information out about the pilot as we have more to release.
Great, thank you. Just before we go to questions of staff, there are deputants, so I want to, if you don't mind, we're going to go to that first, and then we'll come back to questions of both either city transportation staff or TTC staff. And so the first deputant on our list is Councillor Joe Cressy, and so I don't know if you want to just do it from there, or we'll need that space for other deputants though, so it's up to you.
Thank you, Chair. And to members of the Commission, thank you for indulging another councillor coming to speak on this matter. And certainly I should start off by thanking the TTC for leadership on this. I wanted to be here as one of two local city councillors where the pilot will take place. I represent the area from Bathurst over to University, and this goes from Bathurst to Jarvis. If you ask both the people who work in my district, the people who commute through it, and the people who live there, you'll get a pretty resounding response, which is that King Street is broken, that it doesn't work for anyone. If you're driving, you avoid King at all costs. If you're taking the streetcar, often you walk because it's faster. And if you're walking, frankly, there isn't space on the sidewalks. And so it is absolutely time for a transit-first approach, and I should note that line, transit-first approach, has been trademarked by Brad Ross, and you all have to give him $5 every time you say it. But he's absolutely right. The TTC, in describing the need for a transit and people-first approach, is right. As you've heard, this is the busiest surface-level transit route in the city. It's the third busiest transit route in the entire city, and meanwhile, it doesn't move people. So the notion of redesigning King Street to move people is in fact, and forgive the pun, it is the better way. It's what we have to do. In downtown today, we have an overnight population of 240,000 people. That's our overnight residential population. By day, on weekdays, the population of downtown quadruples to nearly 900,000 people. So the population downtown quadruples every single day on a work day. That's because 1/3 of all the jobs in the entire city are located in the core, just as we also have universities and colleges. And that's just today. In the next 25 years, we are doubling the population of downtown to nearly 500,000 people, and the City of Toronto is going to be increasing an additional 1 million people. And 43% of all non-residential development is downtown. And so what does that mean? It means that the only way we're going to be able to move people in and out of the core quickly, and in turn, the only way we're going to be able to ensure people have a good quality of life by having time at home and to continue economic prosperity in the city is by redesigning our streets. And as a local councillor, I can tell you that change is very hard when it comes to our streets. I cannot put a speed bump on a local residential street without fierce debate, let alone redesigning King Street. But on King, it is absolutely necessary. I want you to know that the local councillors, myself and Deputy Mayor Pam McConnell, are fully supportive of this initiative and here to work with the TTC every step of the way, block by block, to make sure it works. And I do believe that to do nothing is simply a losing proposition, that we designed our streets to move cars, and in a growing city, we have to redesign our streets to move people. And this is absolutely the way to go. And I want to thank, again, in closing, the TTC for your leadership and your work to the staff. And I know many commission members around the table who have been pushing quietly behind the scenes to make this a reality for your leadership. We could not have done this without you. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. You do have a question from Commissioner Mihevc. Go ahead.
Thank you. Could you help the commission understand what's the local support like, residents and businesses?
Sure. So when it comes to the local context, the local residents association, the Entertainment District Residents Association, is fully supportive. In fact, they've been crying out for this. And to say nothing more than just residents associations, speaking anecdotally, residents as well. For businesses, there are differences of opinion. The BIA, I think importantly, in our district, the Entertainment District BIA, one of the largest, has said they are neither supporting nor opposing the project, rather they're here to work with the city to see how it works, and importantly, to participate in the economic impact study. They need to know what the results are going to be before they take a position, hence doing a pilot. And that's the strength, I think, of a pilot, is not only our ability to monitor and evaluate, but also to make changes in real time and to improve it in real time. And the BIA has committed to being part of that process and being part of that study, and frankly, keen to see the results of it.
Other questions? No, great, thanks so much for your presentation. Next on our list is Alan Ewell, who I don't see here. No, he's withdrawn his name. And Hamish Wilson, is Hamish here? Go ahead, I'll start your time.
To say that this is actually a step forward, and it is. I'm just kind of sad that we're proceeding with a relatively inadequate measure overall, I'm afraid, because we really need robust transit. We need new corridors. We need new transit, not tweaking a milk run, relatively speaking. And it's not me being critical now, particularly. It is, but if you go to the 1993 West Waterfront LRT EA, they analyzed a number of options to look at the improving of transit from Mimico and Etobicoke and Parkdale into the core. They had a pretty good EA study, analyzed a number of things, including a Front Street Transitway, and also King Street. And the King Street changes, they're relatively minor and didn't work so well. So what we really need to be doing, I'm afraid, and this goes back, some of people might remember a fuss about the Front Street extension that I was on for about 5 odd years or 6 odd years. Instead of a road project, let's build a transitway. The downtown relief line from 1985, I think some form of transitway along Front Street these days is the new corridor that is really the solution to this. And that's where we should be focusing much more of our time and energies on. Yes, this King Street thing is a start. It's something, but seriously, if we're getting all the growth, the proper response, and we've had all this growth, the proper response is a new corridor and reacting to the intense travel demands and getting King, Queen relief, the Gardner relief, and the Lakeshore relief, and it also would help Bloor as well. So rather than building a little road section here between Dufferin and Strawn, we should be putting that as part of a transit way. And we should be connecting up to the rest of the city, because if we have a new corridor that comes in, that allows for flexibility on King and on Queen. We could actually really start to experiment. Now is, I guess, probably not the time to really get into it, but all the details. Let me see if I can find something here. But to try and expedite a transit way.
Could we try and keep it to King Street?
Well, the challenge is, sir, this is a relatively light.
Whether it's light or not, we have procedures, and we're dealing with King Street now, and so we'd love to hear your comments on King and what's proposed.
Well, King Street is completely inadequate. This proposal is really inadequate compared to trying to do a proper heavy transit, robust transit, such as a Front Street Transitway or a Queen Street subway, or perhaps a King Street subway. I think we need to do something medium term that should be planned for right now and really be given a lot of resources. There's this very slim opportunity, like given the decades of plans for improving the transit in a robust way along this east-west corridor, there's a pinch point at the base of High Park. It's a very important limitation. We've got to react to it, and it's just frustrating and sad that we're not doing a better job. There's a slim chance of doing a Front Street Transitway, but I guess you don't want to hear about it. And that's disappointing. I don't think you're doing a good job of improving the transit for the tens of thousands of people that want to use this corridor.
Great, thank you for your presentation. Any questions? No, thank you. Next on our list, actually, I think that's it, because the other person has withdrawn their name. So now we'll go to questions of staff, and so if we could have city transportation staff come back, that would be great. And obviously, TTC staff to answer any of those questions. Beginning with Commissioner Crisanti, Campbell, then Heisey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the length of this pilot is for 1 year, 12 months, correct?
Through you, Chair, yes. The pilot could go on for longer, but for no shorter than a year, because it is a pilot of pretty significant effort, and we really want to be able to have a good sample size to understand what's working, and we also want to have enough time to be able to make modifications should we need to change up some things. So a year would be the minimum.
A year. Do you monitor any interim monitoring in terms of how it's working?
Through you.
In 90 days or 6 months?
Through you, absolutely. Part of the value of doing a pilot is that we always create a pretty robust monitoring and evaluation plan. And similar to some of the other pilots we've tried, we tend to check in on that data at regular intervals. So certainly within a 6-month period, we would report back with preliminary data, and then we would do the same at regular intervals and look at a 1 year's full worth of data to be able to bring back to this body and the council.
Do you happen to know how many businesses are along this one stretch, roughly? A couple of hundred? There are a lot of businesses.
It would certainly be in the range of a few hundred.
Okay. So just, again, your example that actually you showed earlier on your chart of the map. So as I'm traveling eastbound, for example, along King, it begins at Bathurst. So I will be able to drive into this area so long as I intend to make a right or make a left or just make a right at one of the streets.
At both.
Any street or?
So through you, Chair, so we can walk through that. The both entrance points at both Bathurst heading eastbound and Jarvis heading westbound will be signed to encourage travelers who are not making specifically local trips onto King Street to turn right or left.
Okay.
And then there are a few blocks along the pilot where when you come onto the street, you aren't forced to take a right off for a couple of different reasons. Bay Street, let's see, York and John and Simcoe, either because they're one-way or because the volumes of pedestrians are so significant that we think the right turns would be problematic.
And how is this enforced? What's to stop me just from driving right through?
So we've been working pretty closely with...
Not that I'm going to do that.
I wouldn't expect that you would. But we've been working pretty closely with the police department in identifying certainly an initial push to create the knowledge of people traveling either through, probably initially through warnings and potentially through citations, but certainly through warnings to start about proper use of the new corridor. It's going to take some time for people to get used to. Given that it's right on, right off, there will probably be some folks who do the wrong thing the first time, and after they're corrected, won't probably take that route again. And again, I think another reason why King Street, in addition to the high transit service volumes, the traffic volumes, people traveling along King Street in a car is relatively low. The destinations along King are largely local trips. So having King Street as a local street is the big concept here.
My concern is also the businesses in this stretch and the impact, as the councillor indicated, the businesses, I believe, through the consultation process, never indicated in favor or against this pilot, but 12 months is a long time. And if I'm a small business, and right now, currently, as the situation is, you know, their customers can drive up to the front of their business, or at least in close proximity of their business, particularly the ones that are located maybe in the center of this area. 12 months could hurt them, maybe put some people out of business. How do we monitor that? You know, and if a bunch of them start screaming, if a bunch of businesses start screaming out loud and clear, we cannot handle this. You got to stop this. We're losing, we're already 20% down, we're 30% down, we're 40% down. Now what? Can you turn this engine off?
So through the chair, just in terms of the comment about the business, people would still be able to access the front door of any business. It would just mean they would need to turn on to that part of King Street from the intersecting street north-south, just adjacent to that section. In terms of the center of the pilot area, in that regard, we're talking about the financial district BIA, and we've been working very closely with the financial district to understand the needs that they have in terms of taxi loading space and loading and delivery space and drop-off space on King Street itself. But I think that there was a recognition, at least from the BIA board, that the notion of getting people moving faster into the core on rapid transit was the critical priority, and they were willing to work with us to see the results of this pilot project.
Through you, I also, you can note that the type of businesses, both east of Spadina and west of Spadina, are very different in terms of their scale. And so the small local businesses, one of the reasons why we've been very deliberate and will continue if the board and the council move forward to give us the authority to go ahead and put this in, to do a very detailed block-by-block review, continue on that effort with the local businesses, because there is the opportunity for a fair amount of short-term loading space, and short-term loading space is pretty critical to small businesses, and so working with them to make sure we have that in the right locations and sort of in the right proportion. We've also, on other pilot projects, have worked pretty closely with the businesses. I'll just give the example of the Bloor Street pilot, where we really had some concerns from local businesses about loading zones, and we've gone back and made some modifications there to try to help and manage that effectively. And so we're very committed to doing that.
Thank you. Great. Commissioner Campbell, then Heisey, then Mihevik.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You mentioned that all of the on-street parking will be removed, but isn't the central problem that we're trying to resolve during rush hour when parking is restricted anyhow?
Through you, Chair, we actually see problems at all times of the day. It's certainly pronounced in the afternoon peak, but the evening time...
Isn't the worst time of day, the worst time of day is rush hour when there is no parking allowed on the street. So why disallow parking day when traffic moves fairly consistently?
We do see delay and problems with reliability of streetcar midday, as well as in the evening peak, and in the late evening as well.
All right, so given that this is a pilot project, why is it a one-size-fits-all? In other words, we are removing parking the whole length of the pilot. Why not, if it's a pilot, why not remove it part of the way and leave parking in for other sections of the route?
Through you, Chair, I think what we've heard from some of our local consultation has been that space for deliveries and for passenger pickup drop-off is more critical than on-street parking, and because we have quite an abundance of parking options within a 5-minute walk. So what we've heard through our process to date is not that the 180 spaces was of major concern.
Okay, all right, I'll take that. Now, we haven't done anything to provide relief. There are still the same number of restrictions on left-hand turns as are in place now. Given that there's going to be, I guess, demonstrably fewer cars, why not institute more advanced left turns and allow left-hand turns in more cases? Because all I see is it's no left-hand turn from one end of the stretch to the other at rush hour. So why not provide some relief in that regard? Has that been considered?
So through our observations of the cause of delay, we found that left turn, blocking streetcars at locations where it's both allowed or even when it's prohibited, is a significant cause of streetcar delay.
All right,
And
but
so,
sorry not to be argumentative, but we're going to have a lot fewer cars turning left, and is that not what an advanced left-hand turn signal alleviates?
with regard to turning right cars, we're providing queue space to get them out of the way of streetcars trying to move through. Advanced left would involve upgrades to a lot of our signal controllers, and I'm not sure that, that we would be able to implement that as part of the pilot when we found that left turn delay is a problem for streetcar operations.
And Commissioner, I'd echo that. I mean, what we're trying to do is to undertake a trial, and we understand the controversy of it, but undertake a trial that will truly demonstrate what can be done if we give the streetcars the best possible chance of getting through this congested area.
So are taxis still permitted? Are they given the same treatment as other transit vehicles?
Through you, taxis are permitted, and they would operate the same way as other vehicles.
And what about Uber vehicles?
They're same. They would have the
Taxis,
same
Uber, all the same
access.
treatment, okay.
Sorry,
And then-
just to clarify, taxis would operate the same as private vehicles, not the same as transit vehicles.
Correct.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, so we're not giving any extra latitude to taxis? Okay,
Nope.
they're not, okay, okay. And last question is in regard to the right-hand turns. You mentioned that there's going to be some additional restrictions on right-hand turns, or did you say that when you were with Commissioner Crisanti, or?
No, we would have additional space for right-turn vehicles to queue before they made that right turn, but right turning on and off the corridor would be the primary movement.
Okay, have you given any consideration to advance right turns? Because often downtown, with the volume of pedestrian traffic, the right-hand turn lane becomes badly backed up so that only one or two cars can move. Have we thought about holding the pedestrians back for a period of time to allow 4 or 5 cars to do an advance right turn? Is that something that's been considered?
That is something that is being considered because of the high volumes of pedestrians and as well wanting to ensure safety of pedestrian flow and as part of our Road Safety Vision Zero plan. Final decisions about signal phasing haven't been defined. We're still working through that, and that'll be a detailed design issue, but it's certainly on the table.
Okay, thank you. That's my questions.
Thank you. Commissioner Heisey, then Mihevik.
So my first question is on enforcement. Are red light cameras capable of being used for laying charges for illegal lefts currently? Or would that involve a change in legislation? Sorry? Or illegal straight-throughs, that's true. Anybody, I guess, in the center lane at the intersection. Right, so is that a legislative change, or would red light cameras, as we currently have them, address that?
I think we'll need to look into that further, but first understanding would be that we wouldn't have the capability to enforce these regulations with red light cameras.
Okay, I'll have some comments on that later. I was going to ask as well, at the end of the day, are we going to have data about how many people save how much time by the various modes, so that we can have sort of a societal high view of this many transit passengers saved 10 minutes, this many car people lost 10 minutes. Are we going to know that?
Yes, through the chair, we would be looking to have a very robust monitoring and evaluation plan to understand the impacts to various modes, including travel time.
Okay, so the last area I'd like to ask you about is, because I've worked in the Corps for 40 years, and I've worked on King Street, actually, that entire time in various buildings, and I'm trying to visualize, as a matter of practice, legal or otherwise, the taxi industry has established taxi stands for large times of the day on King Street, and perhaps not at rush hour, but almost the rest of the time. And where are they being relocated to? Because these new ideas for the streetcar loading and offloading area strike me as a very good idea, but they will take up road space. So could you describe to me where those taxis are going?
We've looked through the existing taxi stands, of which there aren't many, and we've identified some preliminary locations for new taxi stands. Some would be located on King, and some would be on intersecting streets. So we're in discussion with several stakeholders from the taxi industry about where those would be, and that would be a detailed design process issue.
So when I was on the Parking Authority Board for 9 years, one of the things we talked about was selling transponders to delivery vehicles so that you got charged for staying in a delivery vehicle spot. So if you stayed a long time, you got charged more. How do you regulate? So I see, as an example, and it drives me crazy, the records destruction people using King to conduct their operations, right? They actually destroy documents on King Street instead of buying space off. So how do you get them moving? And are we going to try and regulate that so that the people who take up delivery space get charged more or charged just for using it, period? Have you thought about that?
Thanks for the question. That's a good one. We've looked at what other cities are doing in terms of pricing for delivery zones. That's not something that we're looking at as part of this pilot project, but as part of the city's curbside management strategy that's going to be brought forward in the fall. That's something that we're considering. But time-based restrictions for loading areas, and then it would rely on enforcement of that would be our approach.
And you know, I had to ask a question about cycling because I can't help myself. So I'm trying to visualize riding along King Street, which I do. And let's say I'm going on King Street eastbound from University towards York Street, and I can't stay in the curb lane now. I have to ride in the streetcar lane to go outside of the street loading and offloading zone, correct? Or is that not correct?
No, through you, Chair, we're looking to improve the situation for cycling, although we're not providing dedicated space. So moving through at that location, you would stay within the curb lane, but on the left side of the curb lane. So we would see an improved experience for cyclists because of the reduced volumes of general traffic on the corridor, improvement to cyclists because there would be more bike parking along the corridor, but we would ensure that any use of curbside space, such as for planters and benches, would provide enough buffer space between the track and the streetcar lane and the curb lane that you'd have some room.
So I guess that doesn't resolve the issue of cyclists not respecting people getting on and off streetcars and passing doors. We'll still have that scenario, but you're avoiding the people being forced to cross the track to continue the through movement. So can you describe the barrier, if I'm a motorist, which I also am on York Street going down King, what is the barrier comprised of when there's going to be a new streetcar stop on the east side of King at York, and there'll be some kind of barrier preventing me from going in that curb lane, and how far will it extend into the curbside lane?
We really need to get into the detailed design to confirm the barrier type, but we're looking at things like a Jersey barrier or planters with hazard markers on them so they're clear and visible overnight. But the spacing would be such that they don't protrude any further from the curb lane, so you still have 1.5 meters between the streetcar lane and the space where that physical barrier starts. Noting, though, that as other vehicles, cyclists are required to stop behind open streetcar doors, and so certainly we would request that as police are reinforcing the regulations of this pilot project, we'd like them to reinforce that as well.
Thank you. I'd like to congratulate Transportation TTC staff and Councillor Cressy and Councillor McConnell. I think it's a very brave thing to try, given the history of what's happened on King, and I really hope it works.
Great. Commissioner Mahavik.
Yes, just to build on that, actually, that final comment a bit. So this is, we've been here before, but this time this has a different matrix of departmental support. Could you speak to that? Like who's in on this? Who is supporting this from a professional staff expert opinion point of view, internal to City Hall?
Through you, Chair, the mighty triumvirate of the TTC and City Planning and Transportation have been working closely. I mean, I've only been here for 7 months, but since I've been here, that team has been working diligently and very closely to really work out all of the issues that we have. We'll certainly learn more as we go forward, as should we be able to go forward and put this out on the street in terms of what needs to be monitored and tweaked. But the combination of transit first and looking more broadly at all transportation users and the systems that support that, as well as public realm, we've all brought our expertise to the table, and I believe
Economic development is not pushing back?
we've had engagement with economic development, and they've been supportive as well. Certainly, they want us to keep a close eye and engagement with the businesses along the corridor, which we are continuing to do.
Just on that theme, in terms of global best practices, we're not inventing the wheel here. This has been done in, dare say, virtually every jurisdiction in the world. Not St. Clair yet, but every jurisdiction in the world. Is there any example that you're aware of that would stand out where local businesses actually suffered a loss?
Through you, Chair, I can't pick up a specific example. I know that we've seen a lot of research that's come out in the past couple of years, and we'll have our own out of the Bloor Street study around the amount of economic stimulus that's generated by various users of the corridor, depending on mode, whether it's cyclists or transit users, pedestrians or drivers. My experience in doing pilot projects in other cities is that you often have a lot of concern and trepidation by businesses large and small before these pilots go in. It's critical to keep them at the table and engaged and really be willing to listen and understand what their concerns are on the day-to-day basis, so you can make modifications to support their business activity, which is also quite vital and important. But that ultimately, as things start to take shape, things tend to settle out and people sort of come along.
So none that you're aware of where it's actually had a negative economic local impact?
None that I'm aware of. I would qualify to say that this pilot has been extremely well researched, and so I feel pretty confident that some other pilots that are perhaps lesser in scale and scope, have had to be modified quite significantly, maybe even have to be moved because of an unanticipated issue with a specific business. This pilot has had such a level of engagement, such a level of study and analysis that I feel like we would not see a huge negative impact that could not be managed through the pilot process.
And lastly, do you have an evaluation set of evaluation metrics that will guide you as to knowing whether we're successful or not?
You want to take that one?
Through you, Chair, we're still finalizing the evaluation methodology, but we have a wide range of metrics in all three objective areas in terms of how we measure that it's improving transit, how we measure the impact to the overall transportation network and local business, and how we measure the improvements and the uptake and the improvements in the public realm.
I would just add to that, it's also quite important that we have a multifaceted approach to monitoring, because I think what we'll find if we're successful is that there will be latent demand, of course, and so we'll have more people using the streetcar, which means that there's going to be the potential for, greater ridership and perhaps more dwell time. So we really want to look at a robust series of metrics.
Can you use that evaluation to, and this is, if there's an agenda behind that last question, it was, can you use that evaluation to say, holy smokes, this really took off, and we should be going west, we should be going east, we should be going to another parallel east-west street and doing the same, and not waiting 5 years to do it all, start from scratch, but you kind of actually build on it very quickly based on your evaluatory metrics.
Through you, I think we'll have a lot more information to be able to apply to other scenarios once we undertake the pilot, and it's one of the critical reasons why we have an evaluation plan that is relatively detailed going into it, so we can get good baseline data, and that we can be able to compare that and start to generalize that to other locations potentially.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Other questions? Questions of staff? I just have one quick one. You just had mentioned kind of how robust the process was in terms of time and thought, in terms of developing the analysis and the study to get to the point where you would be recommending to council or the commission that we would do the pilot. Can you kind of describe like how thorough or what the length of time was to get to that point?
Through you, I would say that in the last 7 months, there's been a lot of questions about what kind of data we could collect and monitor and manage as part of this pilot going into it, and in terms of, as you probably know, we had 3 or 4 options for the pilot. We wanted to be very clear and specific about what problems we were trying to solve, knowing that we'd done a lot of work to trying to manage the operations on King Street previously. We went out, our staff, in partnership with the TTC, went out and sort of did ride-alongs and looked at dwell time and looked at specific impacts at intersections, really got out there and identified the location and impacts related to parking garages, how many spaces, where people were coming from. So really tried to ground truth local conditions so that we could build that block-by-block analysis. And I think that's the kind of data and analysis, on-the-ground data analysis, as well as building some modeling, both manual modeling of where trips were going to come from and go to, as well as a broader model that we're doing right now that's going to continue to provide us more information on how those trips disperse, both before and when the pilot is included. You might also know that we've added a new technology to look at travel times through Bluetooth readers, and so we have some opportunity to really be quite specific about the travel times in the corridor and on adjacent corridors as well moving forward.
But it's certainly fair to say that before you get to the point where you're able to recommend to us to take action, it's many months, detailed analysis, field study, a robust program to the point where you can put something in front of council or the commission saying, please consider this.
Through you, absolutely. And I think the size and scope of this pilot and the expectations of it are such that it was very appropriate to take that time to monitor existing conditions and look at data to make a recommendation moving forward. I think other jurisdictions who do smaller, perhaps less multimodal pilots, maybe they're just looking at changing public space, or they're looking at adding a bike lane, something along those lines. The data analysis is commensurate with the project itself. So I think the data collection was robust, did happen over a relatively short amount of time for the amount of data that we've collected, and I think it's appropriate.
Great, thank you very much.
Through you, Chair, I would also add that the process has been robust in terms of consultation as well. We've had 2 very large public meetings. The first one was so well attended that we had to have a backup space opened up to bring hundreds of people into another room. The second one was held in a convention center ballroom, very well attended, and people watching it online. Online surveys had thousands of people respond, and we've had regular engagement with stakeholders, both BIAs, the taxi industry, and others to get feedback into how we plan the pilot project.
Great, thank you very much. To speak, we'll start with Commissioner Mihevc, who I think has a motion to move to.
Thank you very much. I'm absolutely delighted to move the recommendations presented to us from the TTC staff, and I do have an additional motion, which is before you, that I'll address at the end. We've been here before. I think this is the 3rd, maybe the 4th time that we've been looking at King Street, and especially this part of the corridor, for a transit-dedicated area. And, I think some historian will come back and say, okay, why is it working now? Why is it working now? And why didn't it work in 2003 or 2000 and, I can't remember, was it 10 or 8, somewhere around that year? And I think it has to do with the fact that for this time, if the TTC wants to do a TTC promotional project and it does it alone, it is high risk. But when it has the support of the Transportation Committee, when they do their analyses and it leads to the same conclusions, when the city's planning department noting all the cranes that are going up in this area, does its analysis and comes to the same conclusion. When you have two local councillors who are willing to be champions of it, and when you have a strong, mobilized community, then you have the right ingredients. And I think that's what's happened here. The right ingredients are here now to have a pilot that will, of course, be well analyzed and understood, and I think will probably lead to this eventually becoming permanent. I think this is, frankly, Toronto's chance to not reinvent the wheel, but basically catch up to global best practices. Anyone who's traveled anywhere in Europe and in many, many places in the United States, and in some places in Canada, perhaps the first was probably Calgary on one of his streets, streetcar dedicated only avenue in the downtown core that is unobstructed and does a lot of the work for bringing people into the downtown core. That's all that is being asked here. Anyone who is on King Street or frankly Queen Street, it's the same dynamic during rush hour. Absolutely nothing moves. Nothing moves. Well, certainly in my experience, it is close to just a standstill. And so to be able to pull something out and say we can ungridlock this and achieve greater mobility, I think one of the metrics, of course, will be how many people are going through this corridor. And I think we're going to see pretty dramatic results at the end of this practice. So this is great. This is a project whose time has come, and I'm delighted that it's here. And with respect to my particular amendment, it is, they may find during the evaluation process that this is maybe not working. Fine, okay, I'll accept the conclusions if that is the case. They may find that, you know what, this is really wise to take it eastward to Sherbourne, or eastward to Broadview, or almost Broadview, or westward to Dufferin, or what have you, or this might work on a Queen or a Dundas. And for them to be thinking not just of evaluating it in and for itself, but looking to 5 years, 10 years, 20 years down the road, what are we looking at for the future? That's what the intent of this motion is. And of course, follow the data, follow the evidence. If the evidence points in this direction, then let's hear what it has to say.
Great, thank you. To speak or questions of the mover? To speak, Commissioner Campbell?
So I think that the work by staff has been excellent, and there's no question that improvement is needed along King Street, and as Councillor Commissioner Mihevik says, along Queen as well. I would have liked to have seen a more measured approach to the measures that are being taken. So I'm a little perplexed by the removal of all parking. As Councillor Commissioner Crisanti pointed out, the businesses will be affected. Not only are they getting whacked by the provincial government's minimum wage hike, but now these restaurants are going to be faced with, fewer people coming and parking downtown. And I did a short walk on Bloor Street to talk about the bike lanes there, albeit it was a short walk. A number of the business owners there commented that the loss of parking there is affecting their business, particularly in the wintertime, when people are less likely to be walking to the destination of a restaurant or a bookstore or what have you. I think there's room in the plan to unrestrict some of the restrictions on left-hand turns. I would like to see advanced right-hand turns. I would like to see something that provides a little bit of relief for drivers, because there will be a lot fewer cars using King Street. So the ones that have to use King Street, including taxis and Uber, I think taxis and Uber should be treated the same way as our transit vehicles. We're probably going to see, I would love to see what your estimates are in terms of the number of vehicles that will be reduced. If it's 50% or 65%, surely we're going to see improved transit, which is of course the goal. But for me, that's what I would like to see. I would like to see a little bit more flexibility for the drivers that are accessing the road over the course of the pilot. And, maybe, and depending on how businesses are impacted, maybe it will be, there will be a point in revisiting, the duration of the pilot if businesses are adversely impacted. Thank you. That's all, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Campbell. Vice Chair Heisey to speak.
I'd just like to say that I've worked on King Street for 40 years, and the people that I work with some of them take the King Street car. And from what I know from them, it is often intolerable. And the amount of time it takes to go short distances is shocking. And I observe outside of rush hour, I ride my bike on King Street to go to Spadina sometimes during the middle of the day. It's a mess. So I do agree there are times of the day when King does work, sections of it, but there's not enough of those times for the number of people who are affected by the impact on the rest of the time. I think we do have to try something. This is a less extreme idea than the original proposal put forward by the commission, which had more restrictions than what's in front of us here. There were even, I think you could only go one block before you had to turn right, and that isn't going to be the case here. I'm very skeptical on our ability to enforce it, and I don't think without a change in the tools that are available to the city to enforce these regulations that it's going to be hard to make it work, but let's look at the glass half full for now. So that's it. Good luck.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other speakers? Commissioner Minawong, are you going to speak to this?
Sure. I have a motion. I stepped out, so I'm not sure whether this is in there. So I'm going to move it, and if you can tell me it's in there already, then I'll try.
Well, go ahead.
So I want staff to report back on the benchmarks for success before the commencement of the project. I just thought of this, a lot of the members here, private citizens know, you decide before you...
Can you turn your microphone on, please?
You decide, before you start a project, a pilot project, you decide what a win looks like before you start. You don't make the victory, you don't define the win based on the data that you get. So what you need to do is say, this is what I expect, and this is what I want to see, because this pilot project is supposed to achieve certain things. Let's decide what those things they are that we want to achieve, and let's set what those levels are going to be now, and then let's do the pilot project, right? Let's do the pilot project and see if those things are achieved, so we can measure against something at the front end. It only makes sense. Otherwise, we'll be in the situation, it doesn't matter what data comes back, they'll craft a victory, the staff could craft a victory based on whatever data comes back, and that's not the way we should be running any of these pilot projects.
You have a question from Commissioner Mihevc?
Not wishing to, I think there should be benchmarks of success before commencement of the pilot project. However, they have goals around the timing of it. So here's the question.
Yeah.
Would you be willing to drop the first two words, staff report on, and rather say staff develop benchmarks of success before commencement? They can do that. In my side conversation, they can do that. But if they have to come back and report, the whole thing gets basically pushed out to next year. So are you willing to change the word report to develop? Report on to the word develop.
So I would say this. How about report to this committee on the benchmarks? So staff report on the benchmarks of success so the report will have to come back to this committee. So I will take out before commencement, right? So it doesn't have, it's not going to hold anything up, but at least we will have an opportunity in a public setting to say, they're going to have to come back to us and say what a win looks like. So, once again, Councillor, I think far too often, we do these projects.
Yeah, I'm with you.
And we say, whatever comes back, it's Bloor Street bike lanes. We never measure it at the front end, and whatever comes back, councillors are going to say, it's a victory.
Yes, so you're deleting before commencement.
Yep.
Thank you.
I'll do that to help you out.
You're a great help.
And I'm assuming that they're going to do this to swit, right? Like, we're not going to get this back.
We've heard that they've already half done it.
Pardon me?
We've heard that they already have half done it.
Great, okay.
No,
wait a sec, please.
So just on that, could we therefore say, in September if they've already done it. Are you okay with that, Counselor?
When does this thing start? All right.
That's fine.
Include that in the pilot.
Okay, another friendly amendment.
Does it include TIF next year?
Okay, any other questions of the mover? No? Other speakers? I'll quickly speak on this. First of all, I want to commend TTC staff, City of Toronto Transportation staff, planning, economic development, everyone who's participated in this. And I guess my sentiment more than anything is how long overdue this is. You saw the number, 65,000 people try to use this corridor. And, you know, the frustration of, you know, one driver or one person and their vehicle holding up thousands and thousands of others trying to move through a corridor is, I think, insanity. And so I know Commissioner Campbell said this is maybe a too measured approach. I might err on the other side and say this is maybe too typically Toronto timid approach, and that we're sometimes afraid of our own shadows so much that we don't just do what, you know, as Commissioner Mahavik says they're doing around the world. I think this is so common now, and it makes so much sense when you consider the massive volumes of people moving through on that King streetcar, that we've got to free that up so that not only the streetcars move more quickly through traffic, but so vehicles move more quickly. And I think this is a great step in that direction. And so I think this is something that we should strongly endorse. Certainly the other motions that have been moved today, I'll support those too. Just as a bit of a side note, I find it a little bit distressing when I hear that when we get to, we're going to consider something like this, that city agencies, departments do, you know, 7 months of work and field study and detailed analysis, modeling, monitoring existing numbers and conditions, data collection, robust public consultation like we've never seen. Yet on Queen Street, a random motion from a councillor that lands in the middle of the day seemingly gets the same go-ahead, and we're going to go embark on a pilot study. What is essence a pilot study like that with none of that, no study, no development of metrics, and can I just, on Queen Street?
Explain it, what's interesting.
At the Public Works Committee. It's not been cast, like, anyways, can I speak? And so I think that when you see probably the money and time and work that's been put in by TTC, other departments, just to get to the point where they're saying, hey, City Council and the Commission, let's look at this, let's consider the pilot now as their best advice, that we, on a drop of a hat like that, would do it on Queen Street, to me is distressing, and I think something that we have to consider as a comparator, because of the really good work that's been done here to get the city to the point, and council to a point, and the commission to a point where we would move ahead on this and think of it as a reasonable and rational approach to take. So with that, I'll support the motions in front of us moved by staff recommendations, and the motions by Commissioners Min and Wong and Mahavik. I think those are the two of them, and hopefully we can move this forward and get going, and it proves to be a success. So with that, let's move on, vote on Commissioner Mahavik's. So split it, I guess, at the point where, right there. Okay? So on the first half, the east-west, I guess, extension. He can ask for it split. On the east-west part, all in favor?
King Street ends at Broadview.
Okay. To consider the cost in the second part, another consideration of looking out of the corridors, all in favor? Opposed? That carries. Commissioner Min Wong's amendment, all in favor? Any opposed? No, that carries. And then the item as amended with the staff recommendations, all in favor? I'll ask for a recorded vote. Commissioners Mahavik, Byers, Lalonde, Cole, Heisey, Min and Wong, De Laurentiis, Vagadakis, opposed. Commissioner Campbell. That carries. Thank you very much. Okay, so now we are going to move to questions of staff, if there are questions of, I guess, staff or the Auditor General, if there are any, on items number 11 and 12. Let's deal with them together. Question on 12 from Commissioner Byers. Of who, do you think? Who do you think your question's of? Okay. Okay. Go for it.
So thank you. I wanted to, we get everything, all the material together, but the page here that's kind of at a glance, one pager, that's part of your report. What's the, how does that fit into the report? Is it meant to encapsulate the report, or just what's the purpose of the at a glance page, just out of curiosity?
Yeah, thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. The at a glance is simply just a very high-level summary of the report. It's common for Auditor Generals from all jurisdictions, and it's just meant to encapsulate the report. There are times when people, like sometimes councillors don't have the opportunity because of the extensive amount of information to go through the report, so that simply captures the highlights and then they can delve into the report.
Okay, great, thank you. And so you've done, your team have done a lot of work on the materials and procurement with the TTC staff. Clearly, there's, I would call, you use, chronic shortages, 19 recommendations. So in your one pager, it's kind of doesn't look great. Were they doing anything right? Did you find that they did anything at all good?
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair, I think it's extremely important to put this report in context, and I think that when you look at the TTC over the last 2 years, actually, I'm in my third year. When I arrived, TTC had started transformation. And from what I saw, I remember Mr. Byford saying that he thought maybe from there about 3 years, maybe 5. I knew it would probably be more because of the need for transformation. TTC has a lot of great people, and also they are transforming different areas. I can point to, for example, the area of Rich Wong and bus warranty, and they take our recommendations, but then leverage off of that and do a lot of great work around that. Another area, Rick Leary. In this area, it was broken, and you do have a new leader, and it's hard to change everything all at the same time, I'll be honest. This provides a roadmap for the new leader, and Mr. Roto, he has been so supportive of implementing recommendations all the way along through this entire process. So now with the new leadership in place, they can leverage off of these as a roadmap. We did identify quite a bit of saving potential there, but it was extremely hard to get information. Sometimes I had the feeling that the management itself didn't have all of the information that it needed to be able to make the decisions that it needed to. One example would be in the material requests, they would report that 80 to 90% of the requests would be filled within, the requests were filled within 2 days or 2 weeks. They were filled in a certain period of time, 80 to 90% of the time, but actually that was only when you picked up the item off the shelf and delivered it. It really wasn't from the very beginning to the very end. This is, it's bad news in a way, but it's a great news story from the perspective that it's an opportunity to transform. What's needed here is to take a step back and look at from the materials being ordered all the way through to procurement. Do you need it, and then to go to procurement, and then if they don't arrive on time, it impacts operations. It's an opportunity for that, and that's the spirit in which it was brought forward. So in this area, there weren't a lot of great things. There were some things, for example, when they used the opportunity to test alternative parts, to make sure that they could use another part instead of the original manufacturer's part in the bus and not impact safety and not impact other things. That was great. They saved 20% of the time. I think what was missing was taking that great best practice and then leveraging that. You had another opportunity in the bus warranty area, which, where Rich Wong put in place a system to monitor warranties when parts come out and made sure they went back. That system can be built on and leveraged. So there's lots of opportunities and good things. These areas together do need to be absolutely fixed.
Well, I appreciate that and appreciate your great work. I mean, all I'd ask is that you do communicate the positives as well as the challenges, because I think that's an important to a
I agree.
collaborative relationship, and appreciate you and your team's very hard work here.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I look forward to doing that. Thank you for your comment.
Thank you. Other questions? And again, we're kind of dealing with both 11 and 12, just because of the auditor's time. We had a robust discussion on both at audit and risk recently. Okay, so with that, we're going to have Commissioner Byers move staff recommendations on number 11. All in favor? That's everyone. That carries. And then on number 12, Commissioner Byers will again move the staff recommendations. All in favor?
Thank you.
No opposed. That carries. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That moves us back now to item number 5. And we do have deputants. So just for everyone's, just so we kind of know where we are, we're now back at item number 5, and we'll just be going through the agenda, and the remaining items are number 5, the Wheel-Trans item, number 6, Express Bus Route Network, number 7, Capital Delivery Review, 16, 17, 18, and 20. Okay, so no, okay. Okay, so item number 5. So we do have deputants on our list here. First on the list is Patricia Riley. Welcome. You just want to make sure your microphone's on, and I'll start your 5 minutes now.
Okay, thank you. Is it on?
Yep, you're good. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak to the Toronto Transit Commission Board today. There is an issue that my organization, iTaxi Workers Association, has been monitoring since I took over the position a year ago. We have accessibility transit services being delivered in the City of Toronto under contract to 4 brokerages, and many of the drivers in those brokerages are members of iTaxi Workers Association. In the delivery of those public-private partnership contracts, there has been significant labor issues ongoing, and seeing this item on your agenda, number 5, labor issues and accessibility transit delivery, it was imperative that we come and speak today. Back in April, we met with one of your commissioners, Councillor Mihevik. A letter was then sent to the head of Accessibility Services, Eve Wiggins, in the beginning of May. And in the month ongoing past that time, there was a situation at one of the brokerages where there was an attempt to extract a significant amount of money from the drivers, where we had identified previously a colleague, Council Howard Morton and myself, with the drivers, that the attempts to extract money from the drivers was in contravention of the terms of that contract between your commission and the brokerages. I want to also let you know that in order to obtain the information, the drivers that work under these brokerage contracts had to pay over $700 to the Toronto Transit Commission in order to access the information under which they were delivering services to a high-needs community, our disabled community members. So in the month of the investigation by TTC, there were gentlemen last week who were let go from their service contracts. And it was because they refused to pay over $2,000 for a tablet, which we identified would be part of the contract that they're operating, that the brokerage is operating under with your commission. These gentlemen undertook to purchase vans in the range of $60,000 to $80,000 in order to provide these important public services to the people of Toronto in a special needs community. When they undertook that employment relationship, they were insured a certain amount of mileage in order to provide themselves with a living, as well as also to meet their costs. Brokerages have violated the terms of the contract by adding more accessibility vehicles under the contract, and in doing so, when you add more persons into a situation like that, you lower the amount of mileage, or you lower everybody's amount of pie. You just simply are eradicating their ability to earn a living. So what I identified, and I'm a paralegal by trade and I'm a worker side advocate, is that these gentlemen who are predominantly from racialized communities are in precarious employment. It's low wage, they have no benefits, they have no security, and that was very clear last week when there was reluctance to give this money for the tablet, and people were simply removed from their service delivery runs. While this TTC investigation was going on, these gentlemen lost employment. And my concern and the concerns of my association and its boards of directors is that the TTC doesn't have a lid on what's going on in the brokerages.
If you could just wrap up, you're just over 5 minutes now.
Okay. So what I'm not sure if you folks are aware of what happened over the last 5 weeks in the delivery of transit services under contract to TTC. These gentlemen run around under the TTC logo, and what's clearly evident is there's no proper oversight mechanism. And you have workers that are being made vulnerable, their work is precarious, and we're into significant tens of millions of dollars on each of the 4 contracts. So I brought correspondence, if you would accept it. I've been advised that I have to request your permission to do so.
Sure, we will, one of our clerk staff will grab that correspondence from you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you. Any questions of this deputy? You do have at least one from Vice Chair Heisey.
Ms. Riley, could you tell us a little bit about your organization? So how many members do you have? Like what, I think you called it iTaxi or something?
Yes.
So could you tell us about its history, if it has any funding, from who, do people pay membership dues, all that stuff?
Okay, so iTaxi Workers Association is solely made up of workers that work in the taxi and limo business. Some are doing Uber because the city laid waste to their workplace environment when they regulated an extra 40,000 taxis into the industry. It's members-based dues. We offer a low bono legal service delivery model. So I go to court for them in all their provincial offenses, Toronto Licensing Tribunal, and other courts that they may be involved in. There's no outside funding. It's made by dues. So we recognize, even in the taxi world, there's a disparity in income. So the shift drivers pay $20 a month and the ambassadors pay $35 a month because they're more economically secure and do not have to pay fees to garages, brokerages, and such. We have 1,200 in our database. We have between 300 and 400 actively paying members, but we never turn anybody away. The first group of brokerage drivers that came to me last July, they weren't dues-paying members, but our interest is solely about the workers in the industry.
And how long have you been going? Have you been operating your organization? Not you particularly, but
I believe my earliest, looking back in the records, about 2009.
Okay, thanks.
where I'm
That's
looking back
very
on.
interesting for me. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Mahevic.
Yes, thank you. Is iTaxi able to organize under labor law?
Yes.
Sign up and that kind of thing?
Yes, I've been looking for a union to unionize these workers.
Okay, so the brokers are essentially your employers, are the employers of the drivers. Is that the legal?
It depends. The taxi world is very complicated.
Yeah.
The ones I've come to you about today, there's 4 brokerages operating on approximately $30 million public money contracts currently. They're easily easily could be unionized.
Okay, so your issues are, if I could just say them back to you the way I would, in very short form. One is that there should be, in any future contracts that may or may not be going out, a minimum number of kilometers for each driver.
Yes.
One piece. Second is an absolutely clear articulation of what brokerages pay and what drivers are to be paid.
Yes.
And thirdly, an oversight for a complaints process within the context of the contract.
Yes, but to make it more, not a dispute resolution mechanism, but the TTC has a policy, I believe it's called an integrity line, where if there's any problems, call could be made to somebody and,
It investigates.
yeah,
A
nix.
hotline.
Yeah,
Kind of.
nip it in the bud before it becomes labor dispute
Right.
and a work stoppage.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? No? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Next on the list is Hillel Gudez.
Mr. Chairman, I did put my name on the list. However, you're going to get upset at me if I talk about the weather. I can't figure out item 5, what is it all about?
Sorry, do you want to speak into a microphone?
I'm sorry. I said, Mr. Chairman, that I did put my name on the list, on the speaker's list. However, you're going to get upset at me if I start talking about the weather. I haven't got a clue what item 5 is all about. Can you, Mr. Chairman, explain to me what is it all about? Councilor, I'm talking to the chairman.
Sorry, so you have...
If you don't want to be respectful for me, at least be respectful to him.
Sorry, so you have 5 minutes to choose how to use it. I understand that a lot of the item that were dealt with on number 5 was dealt with in camera, and so some of that obviously is not available for public discussion at this point. So that probably leaves you limited to what you can say, but certainly you have your right to use your 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, if I start to guess what it's all about, we're going to stay all night here.
Well, no, because you only have 5 minutes. You won't be here all night.
I'm not going to waste your time even for 60 seconds, okay? I haven't got a clue what it's all about. That's all I'm trying to say. You know?
Great, thank you. Thank you for coming. Next on the list is Imran Chowdhury. Okay. Murtaza Gower. Welcome.
Thank you.
And if you just want to make sure your microphone's on, I'll start your 5 minutes.
Yeah, it's on. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm so glad that today I have a few councilors and a TTC chair here that I can address First of all, I'd just like to read what I have here. I'd like to, first of all, I own and operate a wheelchair accessible taxi. So I would like to know if the city had consulted with TTC to determine how many accessible taxis were needed for Wheel-Trans service. The city had issued too many accessible plates, not enough TTC work, or meter-on-demand taxi work. Taxi brokerages, as Patricia mentioned, are taking advantage of TTC service providers. Oversupply of vehicle, not enough work. I mean, the pie stayed the same, but there is more shareholders now. That's what the problem is. Brokerages are suspending drivers for 3 days if they call in sick or if their vehicle broke down. So basically, that's a punishment. You can call that. The wheelchair accessible taxi that I own is a rare entry. So I'm sure most of you know that Wheel-Trans only accepts the side door entry vehicles. So I would like this committee, especially the Wheel-Trans committee, to give us a reason why rear entry accessible taxis are not allowed to serve TTC customers. If safety is the issue, then why is it safe enough for people who are paying for this service? So far we haven't got a clear answer from TTC why the rear entry vehicle guys are not allowed to serve wheelchair customers. It is city's responsibility to make sure there's enough work for wheelchair accessible taxis. Accessible plate owners have invested $40 million in this industry, gentlemen. 550 individuals have invested $40 million in this industry. If there is any organization, I see a few people who are representing the disabled community, and this is a great opportunity for me to inform you. If there is any organization here representing disabled community, I would like you to know that wheelchair accessible taxis are not allowed to sit at Union Station to serve you. You should contact MLS, which is Metro Licensing Standard, and you can call your local councilors who make these bylaws and ask why their bylaw prohibits accessible taxis to serve at Union Station, which is the busiest point in the city. So if a wheelchair customer comes out of Union Station, good luck to you, because we are not allowed to sit there to serve you. And we are the ones who invested $40 million to help the city comply with AODA. And again, I would like to ask the TTC to explain why the rear entry vehicles are not allowed to do TTC contract. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Question from Commissioner Mahevik.
So, you're also saying that you're not getting, some of your friends or your colleagues are not getting enough hours under when the brokerage gives out the sheet for the stops that you are to make that day. And that's because they're oversupplying the amount of drivers? Is that how the system kind of...
Absolutely. Oversupply of drivers, oversupply of vehicles, and not enough demand. That means TTC does not provide enough work for the brokerages, and the brokerages cannot provide enough work for the wheelchair accessible taxi providers. So the problem is too much supply, not enough demand. So the brokerages are in control right now.
Right, and so what does that mean for you? Have you invested, how much have you invested in your?
I have invested $60,000 in my vehicle, and the average is $60,000 to $80,000.
And what happens when you don't get enough work through the brokerage? Do you go on your own and look for rides, or?
That's basically it. Are we talking about Wheel-Trans customers or meter on demand?
What do you do?
Like I said, I have a rear entry vehicle, so therefore I'm not eligible to work for Wheel-Trans. So I'm not eligible to work for Wheel-Trans, and there's hundreds of them out there.
So you pick up private passengers?
I pick up from the streets, and there is almost 0 to maybe 0.5% people who are on the streets looking for a taxi. And there is less than 1% meter-on-demand customers, because most of these people, let's face it, people, they cannot afford taxis, so they heavily rely on Wheel-Trans subsidized service.
Right.
Because all they're paying is a token, is a $2 token, which is good for them. So the city, it's not a well-thought-out plan. I believe that the city, the first people they should have consulted with TTC. How much load can you take? I mean, if they say, okay, we're good with 100 vehicles, then you shouldn't put 400 on the streets. Okay. And we are the ones who are shelling out this $60,000 to $80,000 and suffering right now. And not one penny has been subsidized. They talked about subsidizing, but not one penny has come to us so far. And Wheel-Trans, we know, is heavily subsidized. As a matter of fact, I'm paying for Wheel-Trans.
Okay, thank you. I think I got the picture. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. Question? Sorry, sir, you might have, sir, if you don't mind, just have another question.
Does your rear entry vehicle, can it accommodate a scooter?
Yes, it can.
Can.
It can accommodate a scooter, it can accommodate a person on wheelchair, it can do everything, but you know, it's a big mystery. I mean,
Well, that's okay. I just wanted to know that you could, because a scooter is larger than a.
We can accommodate any scooter. There is no restrictions.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you again. Next on the list, actually, we've had 2 people request to be added. Okay. Commissioners, we've had 2 people who have been asked to be added to the list on this late and missed the deadline, Sajid Mughal and Emily Digg. All in favor of them being added? All in favor? I need to see hands, please. Opposed? Okay, so we'll add those 2. So Sajid is first. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair and committee members, for allowing me. I won't be long, very short, and convey my message. Mr. Chair.
Carry on.
Mr. Chair and committee members, good afternoon. My name is Sajid Mughal, and I'm president of Taxi Workers Association.
Sorry, folks, these.
This association is voluntary dues-based organization which advocates for the justice and dignity of its members. In 2009, taxi drivers came together to form the association to improve the rights and the working condition of the taxi drivers. TTC Chief Executive Officer recommends to this board that since this report, which is confidential, contains information that is related to labor relations or employee negotiations, so keep this confidential. Keep the confidential update Wheel-Trans taxi contract confidential. Mr. Chair, I'm not sure the implication of labor relations or employee negotiation on the drivers serving the TTC contract, but please allow me to express the grievances of my members serving the contract, the TTC contract. Some contractors are severely violating the terms of the contract, including but not limited to charging drivers for the equipments, for the service, etc. In addition, the drivers are not getting enough mileage. Contractors have much more TTLs vehicles in their brokerages than they needed. In 2014, when the contracts were awarded, there were 115 to 120 W plates which are dedicated for the accessible service were available. 4 contracts for 50 vehicles each were awarded. The shortfall of accessible vehicle was covered at that time with the standard plates. Drivers were getting enough mileage, decent mileage, when they got the contract in 2014. The contractors were even offering the perks and the incentives at that time. Then all of a sudden, the whole scenario got changed when city issued TTL licenses. Today, there are more than 700 TTL accessible vehicles, and there are some more standard plates and ambassador plates have been converted to accessible vehicles as well. These vehicles are 3 times more than what TTC needs to serve the community with a disability. This gave a license to these brokerages to exploit the drivers from left and right. If the driver makes any mistake, the contract without any fear let the driver go. Driver can't do anything, spend $70,000 and he is at the mercy of that contractor. Since one of the commissioner, well obviously he's not here, is member of the MLS, I will take this opportunity to ask him to reconsider the number of TTL licenses. TTL drivers are suffering significantly. They have spent tons of money and they are at the mercy of these brokerages. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Any questions? No, thank you for coming. Thank you. Emily Daig is next on the list.
Hey everyone. Okay, I'm gonna lean like this, so I'm sorry if you see my nasty side. Because clearly this one's not accessible. I'm gonna come at this from, okay. Can I have another microphone?
Yeah. That's good, yes.
Thank you. Sorry about this, I want to face you guys. I'm going to speak of this from a user that's used these rear entrance cabs. I'm sorry for adding late, but I didn't realize I was going to have to deputate about this to correct some very, I guess, well-meaning but very misplaced information you've been given by previous deputants. For one thing, I've used these roll-in, back-in cabs, back-door cabs. My chair barely fits. It is extremely claustrophobic. I'm going to show you with my hands. I'm going to try and describe to you what it feels like. One moment. So right here, when they get you in, they have to flip up a seat. The seat is sitting right here. There's a tire, their spare tire sits right here, where my hands are. Directly in front of you is the back seat. They're not flipped forwards, they're leaning regular seats right in front of you. Then you're sitting on a ramp, okay? Because the whole entrance is ramped, and you're sitting on an angle, like you're gonna flip backwards. It feels like the whole ride, you're going to flip backwards. Now, some of them are good enough to attach their Q-straint hooks to your chair as you're halfway up the ramp. They'll stop you, put the hooks on, and roll you up. But most of them don't do that. There is absolutely no space for a scooter unless that scooter is as small as my wheelchair, and absolutely no space for a service animal. And I feel incredibly unsafe backing down that ramp. I am legally blind, as are many people who are on wheel-trans who use wheelchairs. I can name off 15 people right now. These cabs absolutely are unsafe for TTC. Because imagine if you're getting unloaded off onto a busy street and there's no curb cut. You have to do what I have to do daily getting off the streetcars, roll in live traffic. You don't know if you're going to get hit. And these drivers, if you have a service animal, they won't touch the animal. They're not allowed, not in service. So absolutely not. These rear entrance cabs, absolutely don't you dare put them as wheel-trans, because I'll tell you this much. It's very claustrophobic because the roof's right here. And some of them, my hat will touch the roof as I'm coming in. So if you're visually impaired or if you're over 4'8", you're SOL. And I know I'm speaking rough, but I'll tell you something. These drivers invested in these rear door cabs, that's great. But if they want into TTC, they should have purchased the ones TTC mandated. If you're not going to follow the mandated rules that our accessibility committee agreed to, and that have been tried and tested by people with disabilities, I personally am an MV1 fan. Because I sit in the front, there's no claustrophobia, it's a lot safer. But this is what you get when you expect drivers to pay for their own cabs and not have the city invest in a small fleet or a larger fleet and lease them back the way they do in European countries and in some cities in the US. I, as a user of these cabs, and I've had to get a cab at Union, yeah, there's no cabs there, but guess what? That Union Station mess with the cabs is the reason why people like me who live on the 121 had their bus stop moved with no bus shelter, no proper lighting, and no proper notice given. It's because of cab drivers that can't do their bloody jobs and get out of the way of the buses and torment the buses. I'm sorry if these cab drivers don't like the fact that they're not allowed to sit at Union. And yes, it's frustrated me, but all I do is I call the cab company for a wheelchair accessible cab. But I'll tell you this much. I thank you guys for listening. I thank the counselors and the committee members allowing me to speak. But as a person with a disability that's had to use these cabs, no way. No. Sorry. I feel for the cab drivers. I have many friends. I've stood up for the cab drivers many times. But this is ridiculous. Yes, there's more work. Yes, there's more ambulatory going on the wheel-trans buses that should be on the minivans.
Great.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? No? Thank you for your presentation. We'll move to the item. Questions of staff? Commissioner Campbell.
A couple of questions of staff on this, just for the public standpoint. We talked about satisfaction with the service and how it has risen. Have we looked at satisfaction by mode?
Yes, we have both.
We have both. Is there any reason why those numbers they're public numbers? I mean, whether it's taxi, sedan, or bus? Are the levels of satisfaction comparable among all three?
As far as I'm aware, yes, we can provide those to the board included in the July report, if you like.
Okay. The other thing is, I mentioned it, I asked it earlier when the deputy, can we accommodate scooters on our wheel-trans? Or do we accommodate scooters on the buses? We do.
Yes.
And is that becoming more prevalent, scooters?
Yes.
They are. Okay, that's it.
Other questions? To move the staff recommendation? Oh, okay.
To speak.
So sorry, to speak then?
Just to formalize, I think the deputants have made some interesting points, and I think staff, I know they're working on things, and, we're in camera on that part of it. So I would just ask that the comments be, just so it's formalized, that refer the deputations and any written submissions to staff for consideration and any appropriate action. That's basically it. That formalizes the input that we got from staff, from the public.
Thank you. And of course, we expect that always happens, right?
Yes, but this formalizes it, and
I know.
it gives them their due.
Okay, so on Commissioner Mihevic's, we'll call it an amendment or the additional motion. All in favor? No opposed. On the staff recommendations, now as amended, all in favor? That carries. Thanks. I'm afraid to do a quick item, we might lose you. Okay, sure, which item this is?
It's number 20. Sorry, my microphone doesn't work.
Item 20 is Commissioner Mahavic's item.
Trying to be silenced.
It's
Yes, so I've given it to staff. It's just to, well, there was I believe, it wasn't release pressure, it was actually alleviate pressure on the Yonge University line and on the overburdened parts of Line 2 from Coxwell Station to St. George and Yonge Bloor Station itself, because there's actually lots of congestion on those other routes that are actually making Yonge and Bloor even more congested. So I was wondering if that could be rolled into this report.
So I guess that's, is this a quick item, or do people want to talk to the item in general, or?
If you want to think,
Okay, so it's, I'm not.
it's not quick then.
I'm not feeling like it is. Okay. Well, no, we have deputants waiting on a lot of
It's
items, so. Okay, the one that might be a quick item is, does anyone else have questions? I held the capital delivery review item. Does anyone have questions or want to speak to that? My motion is, do you want to? Okay, then that's fine. So let's go to number 6, Express Bus Route Network Study. We have a list of deputants beginning with Hamish Wilson. Is Hamish still here?
Where else would he be?
And following Hamish is Alan Ewell, Brenda Thompson, Jessica Bell, and Kingsley Kwok. So if those people are here in the room, they can get ready.
I just don't understand it. Like, how do these people?
Alan's not here.
My mom, if I didn't have a job, my mom would.
Welcome back.
Yes, thank you.
Go ahead.
In many ways, this is actually a fairly good report. It's just needing nudges, not, oh, major mistake, you're doing the wrong thing, though quite honestly, I feel we need to think more outside of the box and have more imagination, especially in this greenhouse century. Certainly, I was pleased to read in the paper, Chair Cole is supporting better bus transit. In some ways, bus mobility isn't as good as what is offered with steel wheels with more capacities, but bus transit is still good mobility, especially if we learn from other areas such as Curitiba in Brazil, or perhaps Ottawa or Brampton. The leader in busways and bus transit is Curitiba. They had political will and smarts and got about up to subway capacity for 1% of the cost using buses. Yes, they have a different situation there. It's not Toronto. We can't necessarily transplant here without a lot of tweaks and the political will, of course. The busways are potentially good transit, more so if they're given the right-of-ways. And please don't forget that the York University busway was in a hydro right-of-way. The Gatineau hydro corridor that goes through all of Scarborough, I think, is one of these things that we really should be looking at more intensively for the people of Scarborough. So a recommendation is that that you actually stake out, ask the province and the hydro people to have transit uses on it. Stake it out. It's consistent with the Places to Grow Act. Some destinations that are on the Gatineau are close enough to it. The zoo at the far end, that's supported by tax dollars. The 401 intersection with near the 401. The 401 might need relief. The UT Scarborough is close, kind of, so is Centennial College. There's the hospital, and then connection possibly with Eglinton. So even within terms of Scarborough Transit, I would suggest that this is one area that if we expanded our thinking a little bit, it would help a lot with Scarborough. Also, busway potential, I think, to get relief to the Don Valley and from Pape. In fact, if we connected, I like dreaming. I'm sorry. I want to have better transit happen. We need to actually get new corridors happening, not merely tweaking. So that's the big imagination thing. What I'd actually like to address a little bit is the obvious overloading of the main spine lines of our transit. The Bloor line and the Danforth, perhaps more than Bloor, but also the Yonge line very specifically. It's referred to as overcapacity for sure, the Yonge line, and we certainly need to actually do things. But another recommendation that I would have is tweaking our thinking a bit further as well. And this is not going to be simple, but something that's more radical. And another recommendation would be to consider and study how we get to reversible busways that actually are in peak hours. Some of our downtown streets are pretty narrow, some of them are a bit wider, and in some instances, instead of condemning the downtown express bus network and trying to get them cut away, are there ways that we can improve the speed of these services? Because we have to draw the distinction between non-stop service and express service. Having few stops on a route isn't quite the same as the fast trip of an express. And I'd suggest that we need to actually think about how we could improve the trip journey and speed by having fast transit. So on the Danforth, for instance, and I'm glad Councillor Fragadakis is here, taking the center of, well...
I've been on the board, I've always been here.
Well, thank you. We're lucky. The center lane, I know it would be a change to the Danforth, but my sense is that it is so crowded on the subway underneath the Danforth that you have to wait for a few trains to get on to one that isn't so crowded. So maybe we need fast bus service that starts at Main Street, express from Main, right along the center lane of the center space of the Danforth to Parliament and then down Parliament, like starting express busway service on the Danforth to relieve the Danforth line. We also could try this perhaps on Yonge Street and specifically south of St. Clair. It might be more sensible, whoops, I haven't shown that, I'm sorry. But St. Clair, I think, is when the street's starting to narrow up, and the Mount Pleasant could be tweaked, Jarvis especially. The way to label it, I think, would be to Jarvisize. Take the example of Jarvis Street, which has a reversible lane, and apply it to transit. And that's the sort of thing that, my goodness, time flies. And I guess that's about it. We also need it on the lakeshore area too. The Humber Bay route could use with a better transit way, share it with GO as well. I'm surprised that it's 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Questions? No, thank you again. Next on our list is Alan Ewell, but I don't see him in the room. And after that would be Brenda Thompson. Is Brenda here? Welcome.
Thank you.
Go ahead, I'll start your time.
Thank you, Commissioner Cole and members of the TTC Commission. Thank you. I'm Brenda Thompson. I'm with Scarborough Transit Action. And I'd like to start out by commending the TTC for looking at ways to improve the express bus network, and for looking at ways to give these buses priority access. We need these improvements now, though, not 2 years, 5 years, or almost 10 years from now in 2026. And I think we also need to extend this to the regular bus network. What we really need in Toronto is a 10-minute or less bus network across Toronto. I've been riding on the TTC for quite some time now, and I notice when I go on the Markham 102 bus at 10 o'clock in the morning or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, it's crowded. It's the same thing when I get on the 54 Lawrence East bus. It's overcrowded, and I notice that some of the buses during rush hour are very slow. I have been talking with the students at Centennial College Progress Campus, and they're telling me that they can't get on the Markham 102A bus to Progress Campus from Lawrence Avenue. It's so crowded. They're missing their classes in the morning. And also, when they try to get on the 134A bus from Scarborough Town Centre, it's crowded and the buses are bunched. So I'm hoping that we can look at those routes as well and see if we can improve them. I'm also very much happy about the fact that you're looking at priority signaling and queue jump lanes. But I think if you really want to improve bus service, we need to have dedicated bus lanes. I was riding the 43 Kennedy bus, and I was talking to a bus driver, and he said, you know, if we really want to get people out of their cars and onto the bus, we should have dedicated bus lanes so that the people that are stuck in traffic can sit in their cars and they can watch a busload of people go by. They'll make the connection that if they're riding public transit, they're going to get there faster. So finally, the report talks about how the bus network will contribute towards social equity. I agree very much with making sure that the transit we build provides the kind of social equity that we need, and we especially need transit equity in Scarborough. And for a moment, if you'll indulge me, I'd like to show you this chart. And it's a comparison between the Scarborough subway extension and the express bus expansion. And as you can see, it doesn't cost that much to build an express bus expansion network. And you're actually going to improve people's ride by 20%, and it'll cost you much less than a subway, and it will serve way more people. Why is this unfunded? Why is a $3.35 billion subway that will serve so fewer people funded? Where is the social equity in our transit? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Questions? No? Okay. I see Jessica is next, so go ahead.
Thank you for having us here. I'm Jessica Bell. I'm with TTC Riders. We serve as the voice for Toronto's transit riders across the city. We're also very supportive of this report and the idea of moving forward on express bus service, especially in outlying areas. We've got 5 concerns. One is that it doesn't look like it's subject to funding availability, which is confusing because the TTC has just been asked to cut its or freeze its budget, which will amount to a budget shortfall next year. So how's that going to work if there's less money to play with, but we want more service, which we certainly do? We think it should be more expansive too, especially because we have an overcrowding problem and a whole lot of buses. And so it would be good to think through how is this going to improve the overcrowding problem we have on so many buses now, and what can we do to address the overcrowding that this express bus service plan doesn't address. 3, we're supportive of the measures to look into making buses have a fair share of the road through priority signalling. We also support Scarborough Transit Action's call to look at where could dedicated bus lines exist in the city to really speed up bus service and get riders moving. That's 3. 4, we have some questions around the possible elimination of the downtown express buses, because they could possibly be eliminated because they're not attracting a lot of riders. We had this situation with the Union Pearson Express where it was too expensive, so no one was riding it. But when there was a decision to lower the fare, ridership increased. My request is that why not move forward on making the downtown express routes the regular fare of $3.25, so low-income people and moderate-income people can access it and access fast transit, and see what happens to ridership then. And 5, why are we waiting? This is a good step. Why are we waiting? Let's move forward on this. I don't think we need to wait up to 9 years for this to be rolled out. Thank you for this report. We look forward to seeing it improved. We look forward to seeing it funded, and we look forward to seeing it rolled out quickly.
Thank you. Questions from board members? No? Thank you. Kingsley Kwok, go ahead.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Is improving bus service a great way to help riders? Absolutely, yes. Who's going to say no? Should riders have to wait 2 to 3 years for the first 5 express buses to come aboard and then longer? I would submit to you to say, let's get on with it and get better service as soon as you can. We've seen your crowding standards reports. We have seen service cuts in the frequency of buses, how often the bus comes to your stop. So if whether it's Markham Row or Shepherd or Don Mills or Dufferin, yeah, get these improvements going on as soon as you can. The report talks about social equity, and it's noticed that there are express proposals that are going to be all day. However, there are certain express routes that are just in rush hour. But we now know that in 2017, the people who rely on TTC buses to work shift work, and they don't correspond to the permanent full-time worker who work rush hours. So, and we correspondingly, you see the crowding standards reports in certain bus routes where the crowding is in evenings and on weekends. And so, please consider improving your express bus service to beyond just rush hour on those routes. I think my colleagues in Scarborough Transit Action Network and TTC Riders spoke quite well. I don't want to repeat their points other than to repeat what I just said. Is improving bus service a great idea? Yes. We can't wait long enough. Let's get the funds to have bus routes expansion and express bus expansion.
Thank you very much. Questions from Commissioner Mihevc? Oh, no? Okay, it's questions of staff. So let's go. Thank you very much for coming. We'll go to questions of staff, starting with Commissioner Mihevc, then Fragedakis, and Campbell.
Thank you. Just trying to address the issue that was raised by the deputants. Recommendations 7 and 8, this is what I think the answer is, but maybe you can just explain it. Number 8 says that basically we have to buy the buses, so if this plan goes forward, we need to buy buses in 2018, and then they would be available in 2019 to get this thing rolled out. Is that basically how to read this?
Yes, that's broadly correct. And that's really down to a constraint we have on bus storage, is that we don't have anywhere to put any new buses until we have McNichol Bus Garage.
Right, so we need so there's a cascading thing here. We need a new bus garage, which allows us to buy buses, which then allows us to improve the service. And the strongest thing we can do to improve service is basically implement this report. Is that a good cascading of how
That's broadly correct.
Okay, thank you. When is our bus plan? Do we have a bus plan coming? Last question. I can somehow remember.
We did previously present a bus plan from memory. Correct me if I'm wrong, my team. I thought we did present a bus plan. So it was some time ago, though, so we could always bring it back.
An updated bus plan?
Sure. I'll stand corrected. I thought we did present a bus plan, but it was some time ago. So if you'd like to see it again, updated.
Yeah, I certainly would.
Just for clarity, do you mean a bus fleet plan?
Yes, a bus fleet plan, yes.
Yes, we did present one previously, but we can do it again.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Commissioner Fragedakis.
Okay, sorry, that doesn't work. Let me try this. So I'm picking up on some of the comments that were made. So I had a question about this elimination of the 5 downtown bus routes. So one of the deputants said that paying double is a deterrent to the use of this service. So I was wondering if we were to make it like a single fare, what is the downside of that? Like, I mean, it would alleviate some pressure presumably off of the congested lines.
We did some analysis on that, and you'll find it on page 44 of the study, which effectively says that the servings per hour that we would gain by making it a single fare, effectively would be spending about $100 per every one customer that you gain by doing that.
Wow, okay, so that makes it expensive. There was also comments made that, and it's also obviously public knowledge, that there's like no money available for this plan and with the flatlining of the budget in 2018. I'm just wondering, like, how's this going to work?
So there are some improvements we can make by reallocating some of our service in terms of just changing the way we run some of our service. But yes, clearly this does require more operating income. It was our intention as staff to bring that to this board and then to council if that's what wanted and part of those funding programs.
Okay. Thanks.
Commissioner Campbell?
So on express bus routes in general, how many stops does a typical express bus route make? It's not just like one stop and then all the way to the Kipling subway, if that's, I mean, does it make 50% fewer stops, 30% fewer? What is that? What is the ratio?
Is Jackie still here? I mean, I've used them. I mean, it's hard to say an average, but I mean, it's certainly not one stop. It's a lot fewer stops. I was on the Wilson Express bus just yesterday, and that probably stopped at 3 locations between, where did I get on? At York Mills and Wilson, maybe 3 stops, I'd say. But we can find out now.
So I guess it depends on every individual route. So for the 192 Airport Rocket actually has the beginning and the end and 2 stops in between. Others have 4 or 5 stops and then run express, so it depends entirely on the route.
So these are less expensive for us to operate? Is that correct?
They are more efficient at moving people. So although they are slightly less efficient than the average, the amount of time we save people is significant in terms of the investment we make.
And Commissioner, also the difference would be that, say, the one I used yesterday, the 186, that is shuttling people in both directions, an express bus service. The difference with the downtown, say the 143 Beaches Express, it takes some people into town, that's good, but pretty much deadheads back empty, because it's a premium service for peak hours.
Okay, I haven't read the whole report. Mr. Upfold drew my attention to page 44, and I'm going to pick up on what Commissioner Fragadakis said. We seem to have 2 pricing models. We have the basic fare, and then we have the double fare, but there's something in between. And have we looked at a $5 fare? I'm wondering what kind of a job are we doing at marketing these express buses? Because if I look at the Humber Bay Express, and I hear from Councillor Grimes all the time how miserable the commute is into the city. I don't know where that route goes, but I'm surprised it's not more utilized. It says 245 existing customers.
So for the number of people we carry for the amount of time it takes for a bus to make that round trip means that these buses are very poorly utilized when compared with routes that have, as the CEO said, have trip generators at both end or faster. So the double fare on these is both a product of history, but also a product of how we allow our customers to pay historically. You kind of either choose one fare or a double fare because people were paying with tokens. There will be an option in the future with Presto to more closely correlate that if we chose to do so.
So where does the bus go? The bus goes from Humber Bay, Don Valley Beach, Avenue Road, it goes downtown, and then where does it go? Does it drive all the way back, or is it put into a different route, or how does that work?
So it from its start location, it serves 6 to 10 stops. Then it travels express into downtown. We run 5 trips on that bus in the AM peak. So that first bus then goes back to the start of the service empty and becomes the 4th bus in. But by the time you get to the end of all this, yes, effectively every one of those buses does 1 trip, and by the end of that, it's the end of the PM peak, so they go back to the garage.
So is that part of the inefficiency, that the bus does its route and then it has to drive all the way back? Is there not another way to just have that bus adopt another route and then have buses that are in the area coordinated so that they finish a route and then they move on to that route?
So we do that. That's a concept called interlining, where you fly those. It doesn't make sense for these routes to enable to do that because of the length of time they travel, where they end up, and there just isn't an opportunity to interline them efficiently at the end of the route.
So at the last city council, we agreed to spend money we don't have on the so-called downtown relief line that I think people agree doesn't really provide relief on Finch, from Finch to Bloor on line 1. Why is it that we don't have a downtown bus relief line from Finch to downtown in a Tier 2 format? So a regular fare format that would, I hear all the time that people can't get on at York Mills or Davisville or what have you, Rosedale. Why are we running buses down there in a Tier 2 format?
We do run buses down Yonge Street. The 97 goes down Yonge Street. But to move the masses and to really provide relief, you'd have to run a lot more buses. And I think you would end up with, A, you still wouldn't be able to substitute the carrying capacity of a subway. And B, I think you'd end up with a big traffic jam going down Yonge Street.
Well, I mean, everything in moderation. I mean, I think any busload of people that you can accommodate coming downtown, people would, I think, prefer, I don't know. I'm assuming that people would prefer to ride a bus in comfort than have to wait 2 or 3 trains in the morning. And so I have a motion asking us to look at that, and I'm happy to withdraw it if you tell me that you're convinced it wouldn't work.
So we do things similar to that and have done things similar to that in the past. So for example, on the Scarborough and the SRT, we have routes that we run primarily to supplement that. We have done similar things in the past to try and supplement Shepherd. The experience of both the TTC and around the world is that people prefer to wait for that 2 or 3 trains rather than get on a bus.
So, sorry, we're at 6 minutes, so I'll come to another round of questions.
I just had one. Okay, that's fine.
Commissioner Byers?
Yes, thank you. And I had questions on the chart on page 15, which looks to me, figure 11, like kind of an overall macro costing, if I've understood it correct. And I won't claim, like my friend John Campbell, to have read every page either, but to me, this kind of seems to summarize the overall economics, and I'll wait till you're there. But I had a question on some of the figures there. Lines 3 and 4.
Appendix or 15?
No, in the report. Figure 11. I can give you mine.
Got it.
Okay. So, do I understand that lines 3 and 4 really summarize the entire express route network and their cost per boarding? So cost per boarding, I take, is net of fare paid. So whereas every single passenger system-wide, it's $1.30, on express routes, it's $2.49 or $2.55, and those are median numbers, which I have a question, but am I right in saying that's the cost of the whole express network?
That's right.
Okay. And you used median instead of average. Do you know what the average numbers would be? Medians sometimes distort, that's kind of 50 percentile, but sometimes the averages can be above that. Do you know what those numbers?
Do you mean the mean as opposed to the median or the mode? Which of the 3 averages would you like?
Well, you're above me. Okay, what's median?
That is the median. That is the middle point of an even distribution. Okay. I don't know if we do. Do we know? No, we don't. It'd be easy to use. I think we just chose that because it was the right statistical tool.
Okay, it would be useful to know whether there's a big difference between them and the average. But my real question, so I understand, am I right in saying, though, that the 143.45 and 141.2, literally after fare, these are arranged from $7.78 to $10.78 in terms of the cost per rider for each of those routes. Is that correct?
Yeah, so the median there for the downtown premium, it costs $16, $17 to move somebody. They pay us $6.50, so the net cost of the TTC per ride is $10.
So this system is an extremely, extremely, extremely expensive way of moving people, correct?
Yes, these are our 5 worst routes in the network.
Right. I just struggle why we expand our lowest margin routes on the whole system when we have other needs that might be filled, to be quite honest. These are...
But I guess we wouldn't expand these downtown express ones. We would expand the ones that are above that, the rocket sort of median, so the ones that are costing $1.33. The downtown express we have no suggestions to expand that, for the very reasons you suggest.
Okay. I mean, point still stands, and I guess I wouldn't mind seeing some of the numbers, and maybe they're in the report, and I'll look for them, but just to emphasize the point, this is our most expensive, lowest margin way of moving people in the system, period.
Those 5 routes are. Express buses are a very efficient way of moving people, and it particularly are very efficient when you're taking into account customer time as a cost.
Commissioner, can I just reiterate, so you do understand the difference between the downtown premium express bus routes that we're talking about, the 1, 1, 2, 3 series, and the express buses, they're two different things, and we're not talking about expanding the former, we are talking about expanding the latter, i.e. the express bus services.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Heisey.
Are we talking about closing those lines down with that kind of subsidy per passenger? And if we aren't, why aren't we talking about that? So on the 5 or 6 routes, these express routes with the huge subsidies, given there are huge demands for capacity elsewhere in the system, and this is the highest subsidy level, are we considering closing these lines down?
We're saying on item 6, sorry Chris, so do you want to answer? It's recommendation 6, right? Recommendation 6 in the paper is that we evaluate the Line 1 ATC project and these new streetcars as viable alternatives to those premium express fare routes because they go along Queen, for example, and we report back to the board in 2021. So we're not recommending getting rid of them now, we're recommending that we review their viability.
So I know there's an election on, I'm not running. And
You're the MP for the islands.
Yeah. You know, I canoe down the roads right now. I'm not kidding, it's crazy. Anyway, so, yeah, it's been stressful. So I would suggest that we discuss advancing that time frame because I know that a bus on Jane or a million other places would service a lot more people and we could increase service frequency in places that really need it at much less cost. And can someone from staff tell me why we shouldn't do that sooner? I understand the cautious recommendation we've received. Would you be averse to board direction in that regard?
So I think that would be very much a decision by the board. It is clear that that we are using about 20 buses at this period to run these 5, and we could use those 20 buses in some other way.
Other questions? Commissioner Campbell had another one.
I think I'm good.
Sure. Other questions? To speak? Commissioner Fragadakis to start.
Get rid of them.
Oh, I forgot. Thanks.
So, no, it's fine.
I gotta say, I'm a little worried about some of the stuff that I've read and some of the things I've heard today. That we're going to be, the full implementation of this plan is going to take till 2026, which is basically 9 years from now, and we're going to get 12 new routes in those 9 years, and we actually have a pretty serious crisis on our hands, I think, with congestion on our roads and on our transit system. So I would prefer to see a quicker rollout. I don't know how that's going to happen, given that the budget for 2018 has been flatlined, but I just think perhaps we should consider giving buses a fairer share of the road. So fully dedicated bus lanes on entire routes might be the way to do that. You know, perhaps those dedicated bus lanes on busy bus routes with frequent service could also be used by police, fire, EMS, taxis, other public service vehicles. But I'm just, I'm troubled because we need sufficient funding for the operation of this organization so that we can move people. And we're going to encourage people to get out of their cars, and the only way we're going to encourage people to get out of their cars is to actually provide them with public transit options.
Thank you. Other speakers? Commissioner Campbell?
So I have a couple of motions. to ask staff to look at a couple of different things, because as express routes are said to be efficient, I would like staff to evaluate the possible effective relief that could result on Line 1 with the implementation of a Tier 2 Yonge Street express bus from Finch to downtown. So that's in keeping with what I talked about. And just to come back with either a briefing note or some kind of a report as to how it might work, what the cost might be, what the benefits might be. And then the second one is to direct staff to evaluate the effect on ridership should variable, meaning premium fares, be introduced to Tier 1 and Tier 2 express routes. So we have this pricing on the downtown routes that's the double price, and it's a flat double price, and we see that they are some of the most expensive routes. The other routes are effective, but people are not paying any kind of a premium for riding an express. If they paid there's a price elasticity at play, and if you hit the sweet spot, as many people will still ride it, even if there is a little bit of a premium to it, and extra revenue might enable us to do more across the network. So, in other words, instead of paying $3.25, somebody might be prepared to pay $3.75 or $4 for that express route if they're saving 20% of their time. So, those are two things that I'd like to look at. I think express, there's one express route in my area, it's Kipling, and I look at other routes like Royal York and Islington. I wish there were more express routes in the morning, these Tier 2 routes when you could just whip people get people down to the subway as quickly as possible, and would love to see more of that, and anything that we can do to enable that to happen, I would be supportive of.
Question of the mover from, to speak. Okay, Commissioner Minnan-Wong to speak?
Yeah, so I have one of these routes in my ward, and they love it. They really do.
All 8 of them?
No, one. No, it's full. The buses are full. In the morning, they're full. And they don't mind paying the double fare. So if you decide to take these routes out, it's going to be a big deal. And I will say that maybe we should, maybe we shouldn't, but don't do it while the Eglinton Crosstown's going on, because getting downtown from that area of the city is horrible, and it's just going to get worse. And so if you want to try going down Leslie Street to try and get to the Eglinton station, horrible. If you go along Eglinton right now, it's going to get worse. It's going to be horrible. Their one opportunity to get downtown is taking the 144. It's a straight shot downtown. So don't mess that up. The second thing is on your first motion, which you want to. My interpretation of that is you want to put it. You'll have an express lane on Yonge Street.
No, not well.
Well, so the only way it goes express on Yonge Street in the morning. Like, nothing goes express on Yonge Street at the best of times. And you want to do it in the morning, it's going to be horrible. And, there's enough traffic on there, let alone construction, somewhere along that route. It's a great idea, but you're going to really cause havoc for the people that use that road.
Other speakers?
Yeah.
Other speakers?
Okay.
You guys can have that debate
Keep on telling
offline
yourself
later.
that.
No? I guess I'll move the motions in front of us, because that hasn't been done yet, the staff recommendations. I'll commend staff for what I think is a really excellent, thorough report, much needed, and it speaks to how effective moving people by bus can be. We seemingly in this city love to kind of have our warring tribes over subways and LRTs, but buses that move 60% of the people in the system seem to be neglected or ignored. And as mentioned by some of the deputants and other commissioners, in many parts of the world, buses are moving people, whether it be in an express dedicated lane or otherwise, at really staggering amounts. And so I think it's something we've got to look to. I think this is a good first step, recognizing that part of our challenge is we actually don't have the buses yet. So this commission has made tremendous steps in ordering hundreds of buses, nearly 800 buses that are en route. The other thing we don't have yet is a garage. We have one that sits with far too few streetcars in it, but we still have that issue too. And so I think staff has accurately identified that we need to get the buses in our possession. We need to get the garage up and running so we can do this. And certainly, if this could happen sooner than later, as compared to the schedule that's been put in front of us. I think most people around this table would support that. When I first moved this motion, I think back in 2014 about, looking to express services, I certainly believed in the merit of it. I think this report validates that, and hopefully we can get to the point where, whether they're enhancing existing routes or adding new ones across the city, that we have a really dynamic, robust network of express buses around the city. With the growth we're seeing around, around college campuses, places like the airport, Woodbine, there's a lot of logical places where we could have express routes run. And speaking locally, putting my local hat on for a moment, when you look at a route like Dufferin, which is just so packed and really moves so slow, you'd hopefully get to the day where you could have, especially in the morning peaks or morning or afternoon peak, the option of an express service versus the milk run, because most people are just trying to get to the main nodes where the subway crosses, or at least down to the Bloor line if they're traveling on Dufferin. And so I think we need the system as soon as possible. This is a good first step. I'm sure there'll be lots of debate on those express routes that go downtown, just because the numbers are a bit ugly. But at the same time, we should be looking at every option and how to get people around the city. And there are a series of motions between this report, Commissioner Mihevic's at the end of, I think our last item almost speaks to this a bit. I think Commissioner Campbell's amendments could probably even be added to that item too, to look at ways we can relieve the long line, and maybe express buses are part of that solution. So I've moved the staff recommendations. So let's first deal with Commissioner Campbell's motions. So number 1 is to look at a Tier 2 Yonge Street Express bus from Finch to downtown. All in favor? Opposed? That does not carry. Motion number 2 is to direct staff to evaluate the effect on ridership should variable fares be introduced to Tier 1 and 2 express routes. All in favor? That carries. Now on the motion as amended. All in favor? The motion as amended. That carries unanimously. You guys can have that conversation afterwards too. Item number 7. Okay, I have a motion just to, I have a motion to pass this, this is item number 7, the KPMG.
They don't tell you.
No, I have a motion to forward this report to the city manager for consideration during their review of the City of Toronto capital program delivery. So, as they're going through the same thing, hopefully they can learn from all the work we've been doing here, the leading edge work we've been doing here at the TTC. All in favor of we'll take that as the package. This is the capital program delivery, and I just added an amendment to forward it to the city manager to.
Oh, all right.
All in favor? That carries.
Number 16?
Yeah. We are now on item number 16, and this is the indemnification of board members item. And I can't recall.
Commissioner, I have a Commissioner.
We have a call. It was Commissioner Lalonde. We better be.
Well, he said he's okay.
He's never here.
He was. He said he's okay. He's told staff he's fine.
Okay, I'll move staff recommendations. All in favor? That carries. 17, we have a request to have people added to this. So I'll see if they're in the room first. Is Sonam Choki here? Tashi Nangsetsang? Funsok Chompnel?
That's wonderful.
Butila Carpoche? I think I turned that into an Italian name. Okay, so they had asked to be added to the list, but they're not here on, this is on the corporate policy review and the changes we've made on the advertising on TTC property. So questions of staff? To speak? Yeah, go.
First of all, I love the new signs that appeared, particularly the quotes from passengers. I find those are extremely effective on the trains. It's really great stuff, and I encourage you to do more of those, because I find that quite powerful stuff. Just generally on advertising, we have our vehicles and stations and whatnot, I think we get kind of 26 million a year. I've always struggled with this number, felt low, and I think we're under a long-term contract. Is there scope for enhancing the amount of dollars we get from advertisers? I don't know who I'm asking. Just in the future, or is that as good as it's going to get?
So I think the deal that we have actually is a very, very good deal, and if we were in market right now, we might not get that deal because the advertising landscape has changed. But there is opportunity to enhance that, and we're continuing discussions with Pattison, where some of the money is around digital, and you may see our new ad wall that's down at Union Station, how we can do more of that, how can we leverage some of that technology on the TYSSE. So there are opportunities there to enable us to do that, and we're pursuing those.
Other questions? Commissioner Byers, do you want to move the staff recommendations? Great. All in favor? That carries. Number 18, I think Commissioner Byers had questions on the pension fund annual report.
Sorry to be, where's Sean? I was just curious, two questions. And having come from this pension world before, curious about the board representation of the pension plan. It appears to be stakeholders. Would you compare that to OMERS and having some folks on that board with commercial skills as well? I didn't know the parties there other than a few of them.
So the TTC Pension Fund Board, by the bylaws that have been established for 75 years or whatever, there are 10 members on the board. 5 of them are the most senior members of Local 113.
Okay.
And there are 5 management reps appointed to the board by the commission. And right now, it's myself, it's Mike Roach, it's Brian Leck, it's Gemma, and one other manager at TTC. And as we leave, you appoint replacements to us. The bylaws require that all the directors be active members of the plan. So one of the things that came out of a review a few years ago was that we could use a professional CEO. So it's a part-time board like this board is. It's not full-time jobs for any of us board members. Most of the management reps, including myself, have professional designations, including chartered directorships, but not all board members do. So we did a Canada-wide search about a year ago and came up with Sean, who was in charge of the CP investment fund out in Calgary, a plan worth at least $12 billion, so about twice the size of ours, and we've hired him as our professional and independent CEO. Sean does not report to me, does not report to Andy. He reports to the pension board. That was one of the good governance practices, was that the CEO actually had to report to the board and wouldn't take direction from TTC staff. All of the money that the plan has is managed by professional money managers appointed by the board. And when we select those professional money managers, we hire money manager search experts to search the marketplace and come up with a roster, and they participate along with our other external consultants, including Mercer's, for example, on all these money manager searches. So that's the nature of it. The board itself, though, there is a requirement for it to be an active member. So if we wanted to change that, that would require changing the sponsorship agreement, but that's the nature of it, that's the way it works.
Sounds great. I mean, this plan is in very good shape. I mean, you compare the funding level, 97% is excellent. It's better than, I don't know, currently OMERS and teachers would be in the 90s, but less than that. And $6 billion plan sounds huge, but actually it's not, to get the whole administration and investment functions in a plan that size is not easy. So to have a fully funded, almost fully funded status is excellent. So, great news for TTC and its employees. So thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. And staff recommendations moved by Commissioner Byers. All in favor? That carries. And this will bring us to item number 20, which is the new business, the motion added by Commissioner Mihevik, and I think
Amendment from Commissioner Frey.
it sounds like Commissioner, oh, sorry, we have a deputant on this item. My apologies. Hamish Wilson, there he is. And I'll start your time.
Yes, thank you. This is very supportable, quite honestly. I think this is very good to have it happen, but I think you should also include the Bloor-Danforth line. Please, expand it. Because we have the major problems of the major spines are at Bloor and Yonge to the point of having safety issues. So if you just do Yonge Street and try and tweak that we're missing the opportunities of doing things on the Danforth end and the Bloor end, and so therefore it's part of the solution. And that certainly includes better biking, which is a much more suitable thing for the Bloor-Danforth corridor because it's so flat and such a traditional corridor for bikes. The Yonge Street Hill it's uphill, shall we say, and it isn't such a friendly thing. With Bloor-Danforth, there is a precedent, as I'm sure some of you have seen over the years, from February 1992, the route selection study for on-street bicycle lanes. Bloor-Danforth was the #1 spot to actually put in a connected bikeway. We haven't really done too well on that, quite honestly. There's still a section of Bloor Street East between Sherbourne and Church that should have a painted bike lane. I'd be happy to have that done for $25,000. It's overdue. The precedents from London, the Mayor's Vision for Cycling in London was saying that on one stretch of the underground, it might improve capacity by, where did it go, as much as 10% and for relatively minimal outlay. So we have the example of London, England. Please again think of having some off Yonge Street tweaks to get back to the downtown express busways or the downtown express bus services. Maybe part of the reason there isn't so much uptake is that the trip speed is just 15 kilometers an hour according to that report. So maybe think of taking the center lane of Jarvis Street and using it as an express transit route, or doing it more on, say, I guess it'd be from St. Clair South on Avenue Road, restriping the road for reversible busways, which I think are done in Tehran and some places in Florida. That's the simple thing. The larger things are thinking about unexplored potential for surface-oriented relief up to Don Mills via Thorncliffe and the Don Valley. And thank you. I think this is very good to have this sort of expanding thinking, but certainly do include the Bloor-Danforth and better biking on, yep, which is good. But bikeway relief is overdue.
Thank you. Questions for our deputant? No, thanks again. So we'll now go to, I guess, questions of staff, if there are any. To speak? Your amendment to the motion? Yeah.
I'll move my motion. I think it's self-explanatory. No need to speak.
Can I just ask, just as a, maybe I guess a question of the mover, you've mentioned Bay Street, but you're not saying it only Bay, like just to look at?
Yeah, just exit, I think, did I say such as? I say, okay, so I should say such as Bay Street.
As long as that's kind of what you're...
Yeah, if you could, yeah, sorry, such as. It's hard to get good staff these days. Don't listen to that staff.
Yes, for Councillor Mihevik's staff in the building, please turn off your TVs. Yeah, question, I guess, of the mover.
Just wondered, in terms of strategies is a big word, and it implies a lot of stuff, a lot of work, so how far do you want, what's your expectations in terms of how far the staff should go? Like what?
Well, the story I sometimes tell when people say they want the Scarborough subway now, or they want the downtown relief line now, is the one that we're opening at the end of the year that we talk about so often, that one started during Mel Lastman's years. And so it's Mel Lastman, Miller, Ford, Tory. 4 mayors later, and you had 4 orders of government, York Region, Toronto, province, feds, all working very cooperatively. Everyone put in their money right up front, and it took basically, depending on how you count, 17 years from beginning to end, something like that. So we're the downtown relief line, if we approve it tomorrow, it's going to take, at least 15 years before that thing opens. So in the meantime, we're putting in a lot more density along Yonge Street, and we're putting a lot more density along Bloor Street, and the problems that we have now are only going to get worse. So we need some thinking, medium-term thinking, and so that's why I think the word strategy is an appropriate one. So I'm not looking for anything for tomorrow, right? It's just to kind of prime the pump and get us thinking of what creative things can we do to alleviate the pressure.
Okay, so why don't, just to make sure there are no other questions of the mover, and then, I don't think there are, so speaking on the item in general, go ahead, Commissioner.
I just was going to say, we probably need to be realistic, because to me, the strategy for relief was the relief line. If there were other options, presumably they might have come up since then. So I would want us to moderate our expectations, I guess, that there are solutions. The answer could very well be, you know what, there's not much else except refusing people space on the...
Well, I don't know, if that's a question, like, we're not the only one who's... Are you speaking, or is that a question?
Any other speakers?
Yes, I was just making the point that we just need to temper our expectations that there may not be other strategies, that's all.
Well, I don't know.
Okay, so on the amended motion, all in favor? That carries. I will move a motion to adjourn.
So if you go during 7 to 9, you pull that street.
All in favor?
Outside that window.
That looks to be, can I have a recorded vote on that? Recorded vote?
Question of the mover?
Mahavik, Byers, Campbell, Pohl, Heisey, Minawong, De Laurentiis, Fragedakis.
I want to nominate them.
I want to put them on the advertising.
Doesn't exist anymore. As of 10 minutes ago.
I always like a recorded vote.